Chapter 979. Yoon Shusha was his reverse scale, and anyone who touched her would be infuriated. Mu Yaja furrowed his brows slightly. This child was extremely stubborn in this aspect. In this aspect, he was very much like him when he was younger. However, it was undeniable that children were simple and stubborn, unlike adults who could consider all aspects. Still, when dealing with a matter, one could not be too extreme and unconventional. Xiao Chen walked over as well. He looked at him and then at the man. Mu Yaja and Yo-Yo looked at each other as if they were confronting each other. Yo-Yo clenched his fists and calmed the anger in his heart. Then, he said in a low voice, "All right, I'll respect your decision this time. However, this is the only time. There won't be a next time. Consider it as giving daddy face. Good boy." With that, Mu Yaja slowly walked to the door. Xiao Chen's eyes flickered slightly. "Daddy, aren't you staying here today?" "No," he replied faintly and left. It was late at night. The night sky was especially dark tonight. It was like an endless black curtain pressing down on the sky, just like Song Enya's heart at this moment. She lay in bed, tossing and turning. Her thoughts were in a mess and she could not fall asleep no matter what. She took out her phone from time to time. Previously, she had sent several messages to Mu Yaja to complain about Yoon Shusha's crimes. However, after waiting for a long time, she still did not receive a response from Mu Yaja. She thought that he would immediately rush over and ask about her well-being after knowing that she was injured. However, she waited until late at night, but there was not a single call. It was inevitable that she felt deeply disappointed. She had a feeling that Mu Yaja was not as close to her as before. There was a faint estrangement and distance between them. She did not know what was going on. It must be that Yoon Shusha. Song Enya's heart was filled with resentment at the thought of that woman. She felt that she had been too lenient this afternoon and should have broken one of her hands. Unable to vent her anger, she felt stifled in her chest, suffocating her. Song Enya was so angry that she sat up on the bed. She picked up the pillow beside her and ravaged it as if it were a certain hateful face. She pinched it viciously, but that was not enough to vent her anger. His phone suddenly rang. Annoyed, she looked at the caller ID and saw that it was Mu Yaja's name. She immediately picked up the phone happily. Song Enya picked up the call and pretended to sound sickly and weak. "Hello, brother Mu? Enya, are you asleep?" Mu Yaja's deep and magnetic voice came from the other end. "No. My heart hurts, and I can't sleep." Song Enya pretended to be on the verge of tears as if she had suffered a great grievance. She looked as if she was about to burst into tears, but she was secretly delighted because of Mu Yaja's call. "Is your hand better?" His voice was faint, sounding as if he was concerned but not concerned. Song Enya could not tell if he was concerned about her, so she grumbled, "My hand was dislocated. It's been reattached, but it still hurts a lot. How is it painful?" "It's just a normal dislocation, it doesn't hurt at all." Still, she deliberately said that to make his heart ache. There was a sudden silence on the other end. The sudden silence made her anxious and uneasy. Song Enya said, "Brother Mu, do you know? That Yoon Shusha is too much. She's simply." Chapter 980. Song Enya was stunned. She did not expect him to say such a thing. Ever since she was young, he had always been very indulgent toward her. Even when she did something wrong at times, he would not reprimand her. This was the first time he had been harsh with her. "Brother Mu, what do you mean?" She pouted and said in an unhappy tone, "What do you mean by I went overboard? You know very well in your heart, don't you?" He paused for a moment before his tone became heavier. "What happened today made me very angry. I don't want it to happen again. Still, since you're young and insensible, I won't hold it against you. After all, I'm not your parents, so I have no obligation or responsibility to teach you a lesson. However, you must apologize to her personally." He deliberately emphasized the word personally in a tone that brooked no argument. Song Enya was stunned. When she came back to her senses, her heart was throbbing with pain. She cried out indignantly, "Why should I? Why should I apologize to her? I didn't do anything wrong." "Don't you know very well whether you did anything wrong?" His tone was unfriendly and did not give her any face. Instead, he said coldly, "Song Enya, remember this, I indulge you, but it's not unconditional. Remember that there are some people you can't touch." His words were a little harsh. Song Enya was stunned. She did not expect Yoon Shusha to hold such an important place in his heart. This was the first time in her life that he had spoken so harshly to her. "I won't hold it against you this time, but there won't be a next time, if I find out about it again." He did not continue speaking, giving her some leeway. With that, he hung up the phone. Song Enya's hand, which was holding the phone tightly, trembled violently. By the time she realized it, she had already smashed the phone to the ground. Why should she apologize? Why? Was he so protective of her? What did he mean by indulging her unconditionally? He was not like this in the past. Song Enya buried her face in her palms sadly. Hot tears dripped onto her hands as her whole body trembled. Naturally, she could not bring herself to apologize to Yoon Shusha personally. How arrogant was she? In the Song family, she had always been spoiled to the point that she was out of control. It was impossible for a person like her to bow down and apologize to a person, especially a commoner with no status or background. Because of this, every time she called Muyaja, she would be ruthlessly hung up. It seemed that he would ignore her until she personally apologized to Yoon Shusha. Song Enya was exasperated, but she refused to swallow her pride and apologize to Yoon Shusha. The scenes for Yin Shachuan and Yin Dongyu were completed. Yoon Shusha received a notice and spent the next few days familiarizing herself with the score. Ji Yuxingze wrote a song to be used as the theme song for the movie The Green Apple. It was a warm and sweet love song sung by a man and a woman. After Yoon Shusha familiarized herself with the score, she went to the recording studio to record a demo. Ji Yuxingze was not very satisfied with the first few demos that she recorded. He changed the score a few more times and recorded it a few more times before he was finally satisfied. As it was a theme song, there was no need to specially film a music video. He cut out a few beautifully produced scenes from the movie and recorded a scene of the chorus in the recording studio. Then, he released it as a preview of the theme song online. Once the single was released, it quickly rose to the top of the charts. Chapter 981. The song was light, catchy, sweet, and warm. Soon, it became popular. Many fans of the original novel were looking forward to the release of the movie after seeing the plot of the music video. The movie was initially scheduled to be released at the end of the year during the prime time slot. As it was targeted at the student market, it would be released during the winter holidays. Lin Fengtian had high expectations for the box office. The initial optimistic prediction was that the box office would exceed 2 billion yuan. The schedule for the next few days was packed. The movie was about to be completed and was about to come to an end. Next, the post-production began anxiously. The crew was already preparing to promote the movie before it was released. It seemed that in order to cater to the plot of the movie and promote the movie, Huanyu Entertainment intended to package Ji Yuxingze and Yoon Shusha as a couple to hype up the movie. The so-called couple hype was the easiest way to make the headlines in the entertainment industry. It was a rather old-fashioned method. However, the public's desire for gossip was stronger. Hence, this method was tried and tested. Qin Ju accepted several jobs for Yoon Shusha. Among them, there was a reality show called The Love Diary. It was a rather important draft. The Love Diary was a reality show produced by Chungguang Satellite TV with imaginary love as its selling point. In the program, popular celebrities formed a group of imaginary lovers and went on an imaginary date program. After a few episodes, it quickly became a popular first-tier reality TV show. Ji Yuxingze and Yoon Shusha would be the second imaginary lovers. Because it was Ji Yuxingze, they were given the spotlight as a pair of lovers. Of course, the so-called reality show actually had a script. After all, they had to create some gimmicks and suspense. Otherwise, where would the topic and viewership ratings come from? The filming of the show was initially scheduled for next month. Before that, the script would be sent to Yoon Shusha. When the time came, she would just have to follow the script and record. When Yoon Shusha heard that Qin Ju had accepted this show for her, she was a little speechless. Qin Ju glanced at her. Why? You don't want to? Shusha, you have to be more careful. Many female celebrities want to film the love diary with Jiyu Xingze and ride on Jiyu Xingze's popularity. Hee. Then I'm really lucky, Shusha said and stuck out her tongue. It's good that you know. Qin Ju knocked on her head and said, I've been busy these past few days. There's an event tonight. What announcement? Starlight Quietness Distance, perform well for me, Qin Ju said as he took out a thin stack of scripts and handed it to her. This is the script. Take a look at it first. The script was filled with questions that the host would ask. She just had to memorize how to answer them. Starlight Quietness Distance was a well-known large-scale entertainment talk show. The lineup of hosts was also very luxurious. Among them, Lu Fei, who was the head of the lineup, was the top in the entertainment hosting field. He had a very deep foundation in hosting. Among the popular hosts, he had the highest cultural background and was very humorous. Under his leadership, the atmosphere of the program was humorous and relaxed. While making people laugh, he would often say a few thought-provoking words of wisdom. Most of the time, it was very relaxing to be on his show. There was no need to deliberately create jokes or gimmicks. Generally speaking, a show would invite 10 guests, split into 2 halves. Yun Shusha and Jiyu Xingze were assigned to the first half. Chapter 982. This was a prime time slot with the highest ratings. Along with Jiyu Xingze and Yun Shusha were Lu Jingtian, Li Zhouxian, and young Mi Qin Ju picked out a gown for Yun Shusha. It was especially suitable for her to wear a socialite gown as it made her look classy. As if on purpose, Qin Ju also picked out an outfit for Jiyu Xingze. It was the same color scheme as Yun Shusha's gown. When Yun Shusha rushed to the waiting room and saw Jiyu Xingze's outfit, she blushed. This was clearly a couple's outfit, right? What a pair! Qin Ju exclaimed in admiration. Yun Shusha frowned. Qin Ju, if you do this, my Weibo will be flattened by his fans later. Silly. It's better if it's flattened. That means there's something to talk about. Celebrities are most afraid of not having anything to talk about. How could she protest? Not long after this hype was launched, her Weibo was already besieged by Jiyu Xingze's army of fans. It would be a wonder if she would not be flattened once this show was broadcasted. Can't you just not watch it? Qin Ju laughed. I'm afraid that someone will send me razor blades, Yun Shusha replied truthfully. Qin Ju, in fact, she had already received several threatening letters. That was why she was still fearful. Before the recording of the show, one of the hosts, Lu Fei, specially met with Yun Shusha. This was the first time they met, and Lu Fei gave off a refined and courteous vibe. He also had a good impression of Yun Shusha. Unlike other newcomers, Yun Shusha was especially polite. It was the kind of courtesy and respect that came from the bottom of her heart. At first glance, he felt that this young lady was not bad. He had seen the trailer of the movie, but when he saw Yun Shusha in person, she seemed to be more classy than when she was in front of the camera. He had a simple conversation with Yun Shusha. After going through their lines, he said a few more words of concern and left. The program began recording and broadcasting. Because it was a live broadcast, there was no room for any mistakes. The director of the program specially went through the script with Yun Shusha before she went on stage and repeatedly warned her, this is a live broadcast. Try not to make any mistakes. In a live broadcast, any mistakes can't be edited out. The recording began. After Yun Shusha and Jiyu Xingze went on stage, Lu Fei mainly focused on the topic of the green apple. Everything went smoothly. Then, the host and the guests were divided into 2 teams and played a small game to test the actors' tacit understanding. A guessing game. One person received the tika and was responsible for performing the words displayed on the question in the form of gestures, while the other person was responsible for guessing the answer. Within 60 seconds, Jiyu Xingze and Yun Shusha obtained the highest score in the competition. Lu Fei smiled and praised from the side, Xingze and Shusha have a great tacit understanding. They got 8 out of 10 questions right. I couldn't even guess a few questions, but Shusha guessed them right away. Their tacit understanding is enviable. The director gestured off stage and the audience immediately cheered to add to the atmosphere. Yoon Shusha looked at Jiyu Xingze shyly and smiled shyly. She thought to herself, it's because I memorized the answers before going on stage. In the beginning, when she watched the program, she felt that most of the games in the program were quite interesting and there were often funny segments. In the end, they were all scripted. From the big questions to the management of every expression, there was a script. Chapter 983. Oh! A gossipy look appeared on Lu Fei's face. What about the kissing scene? Is it done in one take, too? Li Jiuxian immediately stepped forward to play along. They often NG their kissing scenes. The audience below the stage screamed and cheered again. Lu Fei pretended to be surprised and covered his mouth. His eyes darted around before he looked at Jiyu Xingze with a teasing look and asked with a smile, Xingze, you didn't do it on purpose, did you? Another host, Xiao Kan, chimed in, if it were me, I'd definitely NG on purpose. Ha ha ha. Adultery, adultery. The hosts looked at each other. It was obvious that there was a hidden meaning in their words. The production team had already prepared the script beforehand and intended to use the scandal between Jiyu Xingze and Yoon Shusha as a hype point for the show. Right at this moment, Lu Jingtian suddenly spoke from the side. Actually, in the kissing scenes between Xingze and Shusha, Xingze is in the right state most of the time, but Shusha has a lot of ings. As soon as she said this, everyone was stunned. Jiyu Xingze frowned slightly, but when the camera turned to him, he quickly regained his smile and looked at Lu Jingtian with a hint of warning. Lu Jingtian's words were not part of the script. There was no such thing in the script. However, by saying this, she was deliberately trying to embarrass Yoon Shusha. From the start, the production team intended to create a couple between Jiyu Xingze and Yoon Shusha. The script was also for Jiyu Xingze to seduce Yoon Shusha. Lu Jingtian's words implied that Yoon Shusha had deliberately NG'd during the kissing scene and that she was deliberately trying to defame her. If this sentence was not connected well, one could imagine what kind of news the media would create the next day. Yoon Shusha deliberately NG'd, shamelessly, was suspected of seducing Jiyu Xingze. In this way, Yoon Shusha's status would be lowered. Generally speaking, when it came to creating hype for a couple, the female celebrities were usually more reserved. Lu Fei broke out in a cold sweat, but his quick reflexes allowed him to quickly answer her question. Shusha purposely made ings during filming? Oh, you're really something. Everyone turned to look at Yoon Shusha to see her reaction to this. Below the stage, Shi was worried for her. Yoon Shusha quickly reacted. She pursed her lips and said shyly, because filming with Xingze is too stressful. Pressure. Yes. It's because he's too handsome. When he stands in front of me, it feels a little surreal. That's why I sometimes get distracted. Yoon Shusha covered her mouth and looked a little nervous. Besides, Xingze is more handsome in real life than on TV. When he stands in front of me, he has a very special aura. I'm afraid that I won't be able to act well, but the more I think about it, the more pressure I feel. She tactfully took over the topic. Only then did Shi heave a sigh of relief. Standing at the side, Qin Ju's expression softened a little as his eyes revealed his approval. Lu Fei also said, The Green Apple is Shusha's debut film. In this movie, Shusha contributed her first on-screen kiss. I heard from director Lin that Shusha is a very talented actress. This movie may just be a starting point. I'm also looking forward to Shusha contributing more outstanding works to us in the future. Applause came from below the stage. Chapter 984. Lu Jingtian continued, I remember there's a scene that the director wasn't satisfied with despite repeated takes. Lu Fei then sternly said, the director is very strict about the film industry. He's especially strict when it comes to filming. I heard that he has a bad temper when he's working. Xiao Kan added, the director has always had high standards for movies and strives for perfection. I think this attitude is very rare. The topic returned to the main topic. However, it was unknown whether it was intentional or not, but Lu Fei seemed to have neglected Lu Jingtian and downplayed her existence. He skipped the few topics in the script that revolved around Lu Jingtian. Lu Jingtian was especially indignant. She tried several times to bring the topic to her, but she failed. She was just like a clown trying her best to make her presence known. Lu Jingtian's manager was furious after the show ended, but given her status, he dared not voice out his anger. Lu Jingtian was also very annoyed. She had blurted out those words without much thought. While she hated herself for being unable to keep her cool, she also hated Yun Shusha for being so tactful in responding to her sharp provocation. Qin Ju walked up to Yun Shusha and praised, "Shusha, you did well today. Isn't that all thanks to Mr. Qin's guidance?" Yun Shusha complimented with a smile. "Lass, you have a glib tongue." Despite his words, his ears were very pleased. After the show was broadcast, it naturally caused a sensation. However, the topic did not revolve around the accident in the show. Instead, the audience's discussion revolved around Lu Jingtian and Yun Shusha. On Weibo, the topic Lu Jingtian ostracizing Yun Shusha jumped to the top of the search list. The production team was also very dissatisfied with Lu Jingtian's behavior of not following the script. During the replay, they deliberately exposed her ugly side. Many fans were talking about how, on the show, Lu Jingtian would intentionally or unintentionally ostracize Yun Shusha and lead unfavorable topics to Yun Shusha. She seemed to be very scheming. This was different from the innocent image that Lu Jingtian portrayed in front of the camera. Lu Jingtian's sharp tongue was instantly exposed on this show. Yun Shusha's fans even went to Lu Jingtian's Weibo to criticize her for being scheming, and deliberately ostracizing the newcomer by making things difficult for Yun Shusha. Lu Jingtian's fans on Weibo dropped by tens of thousands overnight. She didn't have many fans to begin with, and they were all zombie fans. However, all of them were genuine fans. Lu Jingtian was livid. She originally wanted to embarrass Yun Shusha on the show, but she did not expect to suffer a double loss. In fact, she was so jealous because her team wanted to be a couple with Jiyu Xingze. Jiyu Xingze refused. However, when it came to Yun Shusha, she actually agreed. It would be strange if she wasn't angry. Why did Jiyu Xingze give such good resources to Yun Shusha? If all of Yun Shusha's resources were given to her, she would definitely be more popular than Yun Shusha. How could Lu Jingtian not be furious? Of course, this was all in the future. On this day, Qin Ju arranged to meet Yun Shusha at the company. When Yun Shusha arrived at the company, Qin Ju had just finished a call. His expression was a little serious, but there was a hint of excitement and ambition in his eyes. Chapter 985. Yun Shusha raised her eyebrows, clearly surprised by his cautious attitude. "What's the matter? Just ask." Qin Ju pursed his lips, hesitating whether he should ask or not. He tapped his fingertips on the table a few times and said, "Maybe this question is a little presumptuous, but I still want to know more. Please don't take offense." He paused for a moment and went straight to the point. "I want to know, what's your relationship with young Master Mu?" Yun Shusha was stunned. "Why do you ask?" "Because I feel that young Master Mu treats you differently," Qin Ju said honestly as he fiddled with the thumb ring on his finger. He was indeed different. At least in Qin Ju's impression, Mu Yaja was a heartless man. Why did he have such an impression? Back when Huanyu was acquired by Dishing, in order to curry favor with this rich and powerful boss and to obtain more golden resources for their artistes, many top managers had secretly sent him a list of artistes and organized it into a roster. It was a common thing to give away women in the vanity market. Whenever Mu Yaja personally picked someone, it meant that she would have more opportunities to rise up the ranks. However, it was said that after Mu Yaja saw the list, he threw it aside and no longer asked about it. He had never had a woman by his side. He was a typical example of walking through a field of flowers, but not a single leaf touched him. He was clearly in charge of a huge entertainment empire, but he had never had the slightest intimate relationship with any woman in the circle. Yun Shusha was the first and only one. He had also asked around about Yun Shusha's position in Mu Yaja's heart. However, no one in the company knew. They only knew that Yun Shusha seemed to be a little special. They could not explain why she was special. Yun Shusha pondered for a moment. She did not know why Qin Ju asked that. However, since he asked, she answered honestly, "Lovers." Qin Ju narrowed his eyes. "I heard that you have a child. How did you know?" Yun Shusha was slightly surprised. "How am I going to survive if I can't even find out the background of the artists under me?" Ju was a little dissatisfied with her belittling. He knocked on the table and asked, "Is this child young Master Mu's?" Shusha gritted her teeth and said, "Yes. I heard that a mysterious girl gave birth to a child for the Mu family 7 years ago. The youngest son of the Mu family, Muichen, is not the child of Mu Wanru and Mu Yaja. He is a surrogate." After Ju finished speaking, he paused for a moment and looked at her meaningfully. Shusha looked a little embarrassed, but she couldn't help but sigh in her heart. Everyone who was involved in the matter of surrogacy for the Mu family was very tight-lipped. How did he find out? Shusha sighed and said, "Actually, there were 2 children at that time. The older one was taken away when he was born, and the younger one was not breathing when he was born. Later, the child was saved after the emergency treatment. My father pulled some strings to hide it from the Mu family." Ju suddenly understood. In that case, you can rely on your children to rise in status and marry into a rich family. Rich and powerful families value inheritance. You have 2 children by your side. That's a great asset. Shusha looked indifferent. "I don't want to." "You don't want to?" Ju was a little surprised. "Why not?" Shusha fell silent. Chapter 986. One had to know that in this industry, it was an abyss of suffering. If it were any other woman, she would definitely try her best to get into a rich family. After all, rich families valued a woman's innocence more. Shusha narrowed her eyes slightly and took a deep breath. Ju's question was very straightforward and even a little prickly. Therefore, she couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. However, she understood that Ju didn't mean any harm by asking this question. He didn't mean to make things difficult for her, nor did he want to hurt her. He just wanted to know her relationship with Mu Yaja. He was her manager, so he had the obligation and responsibility to investigate her background thoroughly. She didn't want to hide anything from him. She looked up and looked straight at him with her clear eyes. She said calmly, "I don't like the feeling of living under someone else's roof." When Ju received this answer that was both surprising and not too surprising, his face was a little stunned. However, these words were very much like her style. Shusha said calmly, "Glory, splendor, wealth, fame, and benefits. Who doesn't chase after them like a flock of ducks? But if a person lives in this world and has to rely on a man to live, then how can they protect their dignity?" "I don't want to live like this." Ju smiled happily. He obviously appreciated her answer. "Very good. I really like your strong personality." He suddenly leaned forward slightly, his eyes like torches. "Do you know my ambition?" he asked. He lowered his voice and his voice was as deep as a magnet. Shusha shook her head. With a smile, he leaned back in his chair and said unhurriedly, "In these 10 years, I've conquered half of Jiu Xing's empire. But I want to use my ambition on you. Are you willing to cooperate with me?" "Of course I am. Before this, I want you to be clear. I don't care if the entertainment industry is a tiger's den or a big dive vat. I want you to know that this is an industry where the strong prey on the weak. The weak have no dignity. Since you've stepped into this industry, I want you to do your best and not be a dabbler. I don't like the attitude of a dabbler." After Ju finished speaking, he took out a script from the side and handed it to her. Shusha raised her eyebrows and took the book. She saw that it was a very thick script. It was very thick, at least twice as thick as the script of the green apple. Flipping to the first page, there were black words on a white background. This drama was a palace drama that had recently been preparing for casting. The title was tentatively set as Lethal Beauty. It was also adapted from a best-selling masterpiece and was a popular IP. His novels alone had sold 3 million copies and were sold overseas. 3 million copies. What did that mean? If a physical book could sell more than 30,000 copies, it would be able to enter the best-selling list. 5 years after the novel was released, it sold 3 million copies, which proved that the novel had a considerable fan base. It was said that the copyright alone was sold for a sky-high price of 10 million. This was unprecedented and had set a new record for IP copyright fees. What was even more shocking was that they had only bought the copyright of the novel and had not even confirmed the actors. Yet, All the major TV channels and networks were scrambling for the broadcasting rights. A certain satellite TV channel had even offered 800 million in copyright fees. There's good news and bad news. Which one do you want to hear first? Chin-ju seemed to be in a good mood and deliberately kept her in suspense. Yoon Shusha was also happy to support him. Then I'll listen to the good news first. The good news is that you have a chance to compete for the female lead. Chapter 987. The bad news is that there are a lot of people competing with you for the female lead role, and most of them are A-listers. Moreover, in comparison, your chances of being elected are slim, Chin-ju said truthfully. Slim? Yoon Shusha was stunned. She didn't understand how slim her chances were. Very slim. Why do you say that? Because Han Yuyen and Lin Ji are on the shortlist for the female lead. Yoon Shusha was shocked. She finally realized how slim her chances were. There was no need to elaborate on how high Han Yuyen's status was in the industry. Lin Ji, on the other hand, was the hottest costume actress in the past 2 years. She was second to none. Speaking of Lin Ji, she had been in the industry for more than 3 years. Since her first movie, Rose Night, she shot to fame. With the Best Actress award, her status skyrocketed overnight. After that, she acted in many costume dramas and was known as the top costume beauty in the entertainment industry. Her facial features were soft and beautiful. She was elegant and had a unique aura. She was very suitable for the costume. When the new version of The Return of the Condor Heroes aired last year, her role as Xiao Longnu in the drama made her famous. She became an A-lister. However, these advantages were nothing to be afraid of. Chin-ju had confidence in Yoon Shusha. Her looks were also very sculpted. She might not be worse than Lin Ji in costume. It could even be said that she was better than Lin Ji. He was more worried about Lin Ji and Han Yuyen's background. Han Yuyen was Huan Yu's A-lister. Her status was there. Moreover, she had been in the industry for many years. Her fan base was very deep. In order to compete for the female lead role in Lethal Beauty, she even planned to postpone her wedding. Lin Ji was an artist under Chungwang Entertainment. Although she had only been in the industry for a few years and didn't have a strong foundation, she had a strong background. However, Han Yuyen's background was more powerful than Lin Ji's. The problem was that the copyright of Lethal Beauty was bought by Chungwang Entertainment first. Since Chungwang Entertainment had spent a lot of money to buy the copyright, they naturally wanted to promote their artists. Cheng Guang's veteran artiste was Meng Lan. However, ever since Meng Lan married into a rich family, she had been in a semi-retired state. Very quickly, she fell from the top artiste altar. Therefore, Cheng Guang was determined to make Lin Ji the second Han Yuyen. Just from the amount of resources Cheng Guang had spent on Lin Ji in the past 2 years, one could see it. She was trying to make Lin Ji the new big sister of Orange Light. Since Chungwang Entertainment had bought the rights to the drama, Chin-ju guessed that they had already decided on the female lead. It was very likely that Lin Ji would play the role. The current film and television industry was different from the past. In the past, the choice of actors was mostly in the hands of the director. But now, in most cases, the investors had the final say in the selection of actors and actresses, and the director had no right to interfere. Unless it was a director with funding or a very famous gold medal director, such as Lin Fengtian. Not every director was so lucky to have the right to choose the male and female lead in their hearts. More often than not, the investors would arrange for people to join the cast. Even if there were no characters, they would create a character and insert it into the cast. Chapter 988. The director of Lethal Beauty was Jiyu Xiaoyang, an experienced director in the film industry. During the preparation stage, other than the few connections the investors had placed in the team, he had sent a group of messages to the few female leads he had in mind. Alas, Yoon Shusha was not among the 5 names listed. As a newcomer, her movie had not yet been released, so Jiyu Xiaoyang did not have a deep impression of her. He only knew that this newcomer had good potential, but she was not special enough for him to personally invite her. Among the 5, Lin Ji was one, and Han Yuyen was the other. Out of the 5 female stars, 4 of them were under Huan Yu. As an entertainment empire, Huan Yu had many big names under its banner, and the flowers were flourishing and blooming. 3 of the 4 top female stars in the film industry were from Huanyu, which showed Huanyu's influence. Inviting Huanyu's artists to be the female lead candidate was tacitly approved by Chungwang Entertainment as the investor. On the surface, it seemed very selfless, but when Jilin heard the news, he was furious. Was this a blatant attempt to win fans? First, they used Huanyu's artists to hype up the show. Then, when it came to the final selection, they would choose their own artists. Not only did they hype up the show, but they could also use Huanyu's A-list female stars to hype up their artists. Wasn't this killing 2 birds with 1 stone? Chungwang's method was quite scheming. But so what if they knew it was a blatant attempt to win fans? A show was a good one. Even if the chances were slim, they had to seize every opportunity. When Qin Ju found out that the show was about to be filmed, he immediately asked Jiyu Xiaoyang to meet him. He threw him an olive branch and went straight to the point, recommending Yun Shusha. Qin Ju had a lot of connections in the industry and had a good relationship with Jiyu Xiaoyang. Because he had spoken, Jiyu Xiaoyang gave Yun Shusha the opportunity to audition. Even if it was just an audition, the chances were slim, but it was still not easy to come by. As for whether she could be chosen, Qin Ju did not have much confidence. He even guessed that the show was tailor-made to promote Lin Ji. After listening to his detailed analysis, Yun Shusha was a little disappointed. I think it's more than slim. It's impossible. Lin Ji is an artist from Chungwang. How could Chungwang choose an artist from Huanyu as the female lead? That's a big blow to your morale. Qin Ju smiled playfully and cast a sidelong glance at her. Shusha, pick up your fighting spirit. The chances are slim, but it's not hopeless. I'm a bit curious. What are you curious about? Yun Shusha asked, since this drama is a popular IP, why didn't Huanyu buy the adaptation rights of this novel? Shusha, some things are not as simple as you think. The benefits involved were very deep. Moreover, one of the reasons why Huanyu didn't get the rights to this drama was because Huanyu's recent focus was on the movie IP. Most of the funds were invested in the movie script. Recently, Huanyu bought a tomb raiding IP and is about to start filming. Originally, I wanted to arrange for you to join the cast, but after weighing the pros and cons, I decided to let you audition for Lethal Beauty. Qin Ju also carefully read the tomb raiding script. This drama was based on the famous tomb raiding novel, Strange Tomb. The theme of tomb raiding was very popular. Chapter 989. Lethal Beauty, on the other hand, was different. The script for Lethal Beauty was more or less completed. It had been changed into a 90-episode-long series. The schedule had also been finalized. It would be aired during the summer prime time. Lethal Beauty's influence was far greater than Creepy Tomb's. Its popularity was definitely not something that Creepy Tomb could compare to. Plus, it had a long exposure time and a wide audience. It was a good opportunity to build popularity with the audience. After Qin Ju finished his analysis, Yun Shusha was already dumbfounded. She suddenly understood why Qin Ju was called the #1 golden agent. He deserved it. Just the way he picked the script showed that he had a keen eye for it. Even if it's a waste of effort, we can't miss any opportunity. What if your audition results amaze Jiyu Xiaoyang? Who knows, he might choose you. You have to know that Jiyu Xiaoyang is a famous director with 2 high ratings. He has a lot of power. Okay, I'll try. Yun Shusha took the script from him. Actually, Qin Ju suddenly frowned. He wanted to say something but stopped. Actually what? Nothing. Qin Ju shook his head and smiled faintly. He did not say anything. He originally wanted to say, actually, it's just a female lead. If we can get Mu Yaja to help us, it won't be a problem. But with Shusha's personality, she might not be willing. She was strong-willed. She must want to get the role with her own abilities. Yun Shusha smiled. Qin Ju, don't worry. I'll do my best. I won't let your efforts go to waste. Qin Ju smiled. When she got home, she began to study the script carefully. She finished reading it overnight. It was a rare and good script. In fact, palace dramas had always been a popular theme for TV dramas. In the past 10 years, 5 of the top 10 palace dramas had made it to the top of the top 10. Palace dramas had a very large audience. If the reputation and ratings were good, as the female lead, she would definitely win the hearts of the audience. The main storyline of the script mainly told the story of Qin Changle, the daughter of a concubine in the Prime Minister's residence, assisting the prince to ascend to the throne. She was given the title of Empress, but in the end, she was betrayed and ended up in the cold palace. She suffered humiliation and died with hatred. After death, she was reborn 20 years ago. She took revenge domineeringly and finally reaped happiness. The characters were distinct, and the plot was intertwined. The theme was political intrigue and palace strife, which was fascinating. Yoon Shusha was certain that if this drama was well made, it would definitely become a new milestone in palace drama. It was a good script. Yoon Shusha sighed again in her heart. She couldn't hide her excitement. She didn't have much hope for the audition, but after reading the script, her fighting spirit was reignited. Taking advantage of the short break after the completion of the filming of The Green Apple, she studied the script 3 times and carefully highlighted the key points. Soon, Yoon Shusha received the script for the audition. The script for the audition was that 15 years after Qin Changle was banished to the Cold Palace, she was faced with the emperor's imperial edict to kill herself. She was heartbroken and resentful. Using this as the script for the audition was a great test of the actor's tension and knowledge of the lines. The day before the audition, Yoon Shusha was extremely nervous. She tossed and turned in bed, unable to fall asleep. She felt very regretful when she thought that this script might already have a female lead. She really wanted to get the chance to play the female lead. However, when she thought of the frightening fan bases of Lin Jiyu and Han Yuyan, she thought that the competition was too great. Chapter 990. On the day of the audition, Yoon Shusha woke up early and rushed to the audition venue after she was done with her preparations. She was in the second group and was in the same batch as Lin Ji. However, the latter was the first and she was the last. As for Han Yuyan, she was in the first group. When she arrived at the venue, she went to find out about the first group's audition. The result was that Han Yuyan had been kicked out. Han Yuyan was kicked out. Yoon Shusha had seen the name list. Did she not hear that Han Yuyan's performance was commendable and that the director was satisfied with it? Yes. The director said that he was satisfied, but it was just a superficial compliment. If he directly said that she was kicked out, wouldn't it be embarrassing for her? The director definitely didn't want to offend her. Even if she was kicked out, he had to make it look good. Of course, this is insider news that I heard, so it can't be fake. Yoon Shusha trusted her assistant's efficiency, but it was indeed a little surprising that Han Yuyan was eliminated in the first round. Why was she eliminated? Her assistant answered, she looks old. After all, her age is obvious. Moreover, in order to enter Hollywood, Han Yuyan's stylist intended to make her look like a top actress. Hence, the director felt that she was too old and didn't have the feeling he wanted. Yoon Shusha pouted. Chungwang Entertainment is really scheming. On Weibo, when the production team released the news of Han Yuyan's participation in the female lead audition, it blew up instantly. Han Yuyan's fanbase was not to be underestimated. The support for Han Yuyan to be the female lead was very strong. The production team clearly wanted to trample on Han Yuyan and boost Lin Ji. Han Yuyan must be very depressed, but she had no choice. This was indeed a good script. If there was a chance, she would definitely not let it go. Mu Shi brought Yoon Shusha to the dressing room. On the way, they brushed past a woman in a luxurious dress. Yoon Shusha glanced back but did not pay much attention to her. Hence, she followed her assistant to the dressing room. Someone called out to her from behind. Stop right there. Yoon Shusha stopped in her tracks suspiciously. She slowly turned around and looked at the woman in front of her, who was dressed in a gorgeous phoenix coronet. It was a little unfamiliar, but he had some impression of it. She rarely paid attention to dramas and movies, so Mu Shi was the first to recognize her. She whispered into her ear, Shusha, it's Lin Ji, Lin Ji? Mu Shi was visibly agitated. It was no wonder that Lin Ji was her goddess. At such a young age, she relied on her beautiful looks and superb acting skills to defend her place in the entertainment industry. Yoon Shusha looked at her, only to see that the woman in front of her was also sizing her up with a cold gaze. You are. Lin Ji paused for a moment. Yoon Shusha? She remembered her. He was a new topic on Weibo. She seemed to be the target of Huan Yu's recent efforts. Yoon Shusha had just debuted, and Huan Yu had already poured resources into her. Most of them were gold resources. Yoon Shusha nodded politely. Hello. Compared to her, Yoon Shusha's attitude seemed a little more arrogant. Are you here for the audition too? She keenly sensed the hostility in her eyes and suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. She had seen the interviews, and the media was full of praises for her character. They said that she was gentle and pleasant, but now, her good impression of her had been shattered. Yoon Shusha lightly replied, Chapter 991. In other words, she seemed to be implying that Yoon Shusha was shamelessly trying to compete with her for the female lead role. She was clearly trying to embarrass Yoon Shusha. Lin Ji was obviously hostile towards her. She did not know at first that Yoon Shusha would be participating in this audition. Despite the fact that the female lead had already been internally selected for this audition, Lin Ji was still displeased with the actress. Why? It was because they had both debuted not long ago, were both highly supported by the company, and had the same style. Huan Yu had used Yoon Shusha's popularity to hype her up since her debut. Of course, Yoon Shusha was unaware of this. The actress was aware of it, though, and she was still brooding over it. No one was willing to let their popularity be used by their competitor. She broke out in a cold sweat, only to hear Yoon Shusha calmly say, this show is very popular, so I'll join in the fun. Her relaxed and teasing tone easily dispelled the awkward atmosphere. Lin Ji was stunned, and her gaze on Yoon Shusha deepened. Her assistant urged her from the side. It was almost her turn for the audition. Lin Ji snorted, then turned around and left. She's lips twitched. I've decided not to be a fan anymore. She fumed. That actress is so arrogant. She even deliberately made things difficult for you. I'm so angry. Alright, don't be angry. Shusha, you must work hard and get the female lead role. Let's see if she still dares to look down on you. Yoon Shusha, however, was honest. I don't think I have a chance. She was stunned. Are you that unconfident? I was still hopeful that the audition would be a success, but judging from her tone earlier, it seems that she's really the female lead, Yoon Shusha said. Then, are we still participating in the audition? Of course. Why not? Chin Ju fought for this role for me, so how can I let him down? Even if I can't get the female lead role, I can at least make myself known, Yoon Shusha said optimistically. Get acquainted. Phut. She was tickled by her optimistic side. When she entered the dressing room, the stylist's attitude became much colder when he heard that she was an artist from Huan Yu. He casually threw her a set of white clothes and left. Yoon Shusha opened the plain white dress. She thought about the luxurious dress Lin Ji was wearing. Indeed, it couldn't be compared. She said gloomily, that's too much. Lin Ji's clothes are so pretty, but why do you look like morning clothes? Yoon Shusha raised a brow and suddenly smiled. Shi, help me with my makeup. My makeup skills aren't that good. You don't have to put on too much makeup. Just put on a thicker layer of powder, make your face look more haggard, make your eyes bigger, make your eyelashes longer, and make your lips a little more chapped. That's easy. With that, she got to work. Not long after, the makeup was done. Yoon Shusha looked at the mirror, and a haggard yet beautiful face came into view. Since the audition script was a cold palace drama, the makeup could not be too gorgeous and should look more haggard. She was the last in the second group. Youngmi suddenly walked in and was surprised to see Yoon Shusha there. She was even more surprised to see her in a white shirt and haggard makeup. Shusha, are you here for the audition, too? Yoon Shusha smiled when she saw her. Yes. Chapter 992. Yoon Shusha explained, the audition script is a scene in the Cold Palace, so, Cold Palace? She raised a brow suspiciously. Shusha, did you get the wrong script? What? The audition isn't a scene in the Cold Palace, you must have gotten it wrong. She told her the truth. Yoon Shusha, however, was stunned. Wrong. How could it be wrong? This script was given to her by Qin Ju. Alarmed, Mu Shi quickly called the manager to verify the situation. He, however, said, "The script is from Chungguang Entertainment." "Why? Is it wrong?" Mu Shi replied, "I just asked around. The first group's audition seems to be for the female lead's conferment. It seems that someone cheated." He gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, "Chungguang Entertainment purposely gave me a wrong script. What should we do, then?" Mu Shi was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. "Yun Shusha, prepare for the second group's audition." Someone knocked on the door to inform Yun Shusha to prepare for the audition. The scene was in a deadlock for a moment. Mu Shi was even more anxious now. At this critical moment, the script was wrong. What should she do? "Why don't Shusha, we don't audition?" she suggested. Yun Shusha exchanged glances with Yang Mi, pursing her lips. She calmly said, "Let's try." Her. Yang Mi naturally understood what Yun Shusha meant and said, "Since you're here, regardless of whether the script is right or wrong, if you leave like this, the production team will definitely think that Shusha is throwing her weight around and disrespecting the production team. If this matter gets out, Shusha's reputation will be tarnished." When Yun Shusha reached the audition hall and walked in, the director's team, who were seated at the table, was stunned and frowned one after another. The audition script was for the conferment scene, so why was she dressed so plainly? Her makeup was also so haggard. Jiyu Xiaoyang looked at the name list. Yun Shusha. It turned out that she was the newbie recommended by Qin Ju. Her looks and aptitude were not bad, but, Jiyu Xiaoyang said coldly, "Yun Shusha, didn't you read the script?" "Which part is this?" You didn't even read the script." He had no professionalism at all. "Let's go, you're out." The producer patted the table. Yun Shusha bit her lip and said in a deep voice, "I've read the script." When the producer heard this, he questioned, "Then why are you dressed like this?" Yun Shusha couldn't possibly say that someone was behind this, could she? This producer looked very crafty and would definitely think that she was shirking her responsibility. "All right, I see that you didn't prepare seriously at all. You don't value this audition at all. You're out." The producer spoke, as if he didn't intend to leave her any leeway. Yun Shusha bit her lips and frowned slightly. Although she was unwilling, she couldn't say anything. Just as he was about to leave, Jiyu Xiaoyang suddenly spoke. "Hold on." Yun Shusha paused and decided to give him some leeway. Jiyu Xiaoyang flipped through the script and asked, "Which part are you preparing for?" Yun Shusha replied, "The part where I was sentenced to death in the cold palace." "All right, you can start then." The producer beside them was anxious. "Director Jiyu? You. This person obviously doesn't value this audition. Why are you? At least let her finish her performance." Jiyu Xiaoyang looked a little impatient. "Are you the director or am I the director?" The producer kept quiet. Jiyu Xiaoyang could tell that Yun Shusha had read the script and had read it very carefully. Chapter 993. Her snow-white outfit and haggard face were very suitable for the scene. Moreover, she was recommended by Qin Ju. At the very least, he had to let her finish her performance for his sake. Yun Shusha thanked him gratefully. "Thank you, director, for giving me this chance." Jiyu Xiaoyang folded his arms and casually said, "Start your performance. You have 3 minutes." Yun Shusha adjusted her emotions and quickly got into character. 10 years. 10 whole years. It's me. I've been by your side, risking my life with you, assisting you wholeheartedly. Finally, you ascended to the throne and obtained this vast empire. But what did I get? What did I get? I gave my all for you without any complaints or regrets, but in return, I was imprisoned for 10 years. Now, you actually want to kill me? Nailin Yi, you're so heartless. Yun Shusha's eyes were ashen, but deep within them, there was a sinister hatred. The dramatic expression on her face was full of tension. Jiyu Xiaoyang crossed his arms in front of his chest and watched in silence. His expression was profound, and no one could tell if he was happy, angry, or sad. When Yun Shusha left the audition hall, Mu Shi, who had been waiting outside, immediately went up to her. "How was it? Did you pass?" Yun Shusha looked at her calmly. "No. Ah, you're eliminated directly? This result was too surprising. She was 100% confident in Shusha's acting skills. She widened her eyes in shock. How did you get eliminated directly? Even if there was a mistake in the audition script, with your acting skills, it's impossible for you to be eliminated in the first round. Did the director say anything? The director didn't say anything, Shusha replied. It was the producer who announced the result directly. Sigh. I should have known that the producer and investor are in cahoot. It's clear that Chungguang has already decided on Lin Ji as the female lead. She scratched her head gloomily. Shusha said, so, it's not surprising that I'm eliminated. After removing her makeup, Shusha and her assistant left. In the car, Shusha received a call from Qin Ju. Shusha, I heard from director Ji Yu that you were eliminated. Yes. Shusha's expression was very calm. After all, she had expected this, and it was not unexpected. Don't be sad, director Ji Yu just called and praised you. He said that your acting skills are very good, but he revealed that this audition is just a gimmick, and that they have already decided on the female lead. Shusha said, it's Lin Ji, right? You know? Yes. Therefore, I am not surprised by this result. Qin Ju continued, director Ji Yu said that if you're willing, he can use his authority to cast you as the second female lead. What do you think? Will you consider it? Second female lead? In the script, the second female lead was the female lead's elder sister, Qin Xianhui. She was the #1 beauty in Western Liang and the daughter of the Prime Minister. She had a vicious heart and was extremely shrewd. On the surface, she looked gentle and generous, but in reality, she was an extremely vicious woman. In her past life, she was the mastermind behind Qin Chang'el's death. After Qin Chang'el's rebirth, Qin Xianhui continued to plot against her. In the end, she suffered the consequences of her own actions. It was a role that tested one's acting skills but did not please the audience. Still, it was a very important role. Qin Xianhui's role was entirely to support Qin Chang'el's character. Shusha frowned but did not say anything. Chapter 994. What is it? Qin Ju calmly read a name over the phone. Mu Yaja. Shusha could not help but clench her fists. She really liked the script of Lethal Beauty. However, the entertainment industry was like this. It was not about ability. More importantly, it was about background, means, and backing. This role should be a piece of cake for Mu Yaja, right? However, Shusha could not help but feel hesitant. She did not really want to use Mu Yaja to get this role. The headquarters of Disheng Financial Group was located in the most luxurious area of Beijing's economic and trade center. The 99-story commercial building gave people a sense of majesty. Standing on the top floor of such a majestic building, one would feel as if they were looking down on the world. Of course, she did not know how terrifying Mu Yaja's net worth was. It was said that the entire Mu Group was equivalent to the country's commercial lifeline and the most important financial core in Asia. If the Mu Group made any moves, the entire financial world would be shaken. The Mu Group monopolized the country and was extremely powerful. Both the legal and illegal sides of the world occupied the vast territory. Mu Yaja held the power of life and death in the Mu Group. In the future, he would definitely become the owner of this highly anticipated business empire. In the luxurious office, Mu Yaja held the phone and leaned elegantly against the back of the chair. One of his hands was tapping on the table absent-mindedly. His long and narrow eyes were half-closed. A deep and powerful voice came from the other end of the phone. It sounded a little angry. Yesterday, old Master Song called me and said that as an elder, you did not know what you were doing. He actually made his granddaughter suffer because of an actress of unknown origin. I don't care who that woman is. The Song family is the most important chess piece in your journey to becoming the head of the family. If you have the Song family's help, your position as the head of the Mu family will be even more secure. Mu Yaja's eyes were tinged with a trace of coldness, but his mellow voice was as cold as ice. Second uncle, don't interfere in this matter. I know what I'm doing. On the other end of the phone, the man's voice suddenly became gloomy. It's not that second uncle didn't tell you, But now that the Mu family is in trouble, you can't take any risk. You know, you're just the heir now, you haven't grasped the real power of the Mu Jia. I've always thought that you're smart and would never make a mistake. But don't you think you've handled this matter inappropriately? Of course, the Song family's old man may be exaggerating, but given Song Enya's status, I don't believe that he would be bewitched by a woman and offend the Song family. Mu Yaja lifted his sexy lips, his voice cold and full of sarcasm. Since when did I, Mu Yaja, need to rely on the Song family to strengthen my position? Since I can sit in this position, I can continue to sit in it steadily. The man suddenly fell silent and did not make a sound. Mu Yaja chuckled. Second uncle, your and Grandpa's era is over. It's my era now. The man sighed and said indignantly, it's up to you. Don't disappoint second uncle, though. Second uncle still believes in your ability. Handle this matter well. I know what I'm doing. Chapter 995. Even the faint breathing and whispering outside the door could be easily heard. He raised his eyes and looked at the door, saying coldly, come in. As his voice fell, the person outside the door seemed to hesitate for a long time. After hesitating for a long time, he pushed the door open. Yun Shusha strode in. The moment she stepped into the office, she could feel the strange heavy atmosphere. This office was shockingly huge. It was more than 100 square meters. The decoration was simple yet luxurious, but standing in it, one could easily feel an invisible pressure. Even their breathing could not help but be suppressed. Yun Shusha looked at the man sitting at the desk. At this moment, he was elegantly supporting his chin with one hand as he stared straight at her. His eyes were no longer as gentle as they were in the morning. They were so deep and dark that one would not dare to look directly at them. His expression was as cold as ice. His icy gaze swept past Yun Shusha and Mu Shi, who were standing at the door. A strong aura swept over them. Mu Shi was intimidated by his gaze and broke out in a cold sweat. The emperor-like aura emanating from him made her feel timid. She could not help but hide behind Yun Shusha. Chairman Mu. Mu Shi had just opened her mouth when she saw his pair of eyes as dark and gloomy as a black fog. They were very deep, very dark, and cold. She could not help but lower her head in shock, not daring to speak. Get out. I don't like to be disturbed when I'm working. Mu Yaja narrowed his eyes and knocked on the table. His cold gaze fell on Mu Shi. His tone was very calm, but it revealed a majestic aura that made one unable to look directly at him. Just a few words made Mu Shi break out in a cold sweat. Yun Shusha said to her, you can leave now. Mu Shi left the office. Mu Yaja's expression eased a little. Why are you here? Mu Yaja swept a glance at Yun Shusha. However, at this moment, he was clearly not in a good mood as his face was gloomy. He did not like to be disturbed when he was working. This was especially true when he had an argument with his second uncle earlier. He was in a very bad mood. Am I disturbing you? Seeing this, Yun Shusha saw that the man was constantly emitting a low pressure. She probed, then, should I go out too? Mu Yaja suddenly raised his arrogant chin, and the corners of his lips curled up. What are you doing here? Different. The man in front of her was completely different from the Mu Yaja she knew. Sometimes, this man's aura was really domineering. At this moment, Mu Yaja was like a high and mighty emperor. Just one look from him was enough to make people feel fear. Mu Yaja looked at her deeply and suddenly said in a deep voice, come here. Yun Shusha didn't dare to move. She had never seen such a cold and unfeeling side of this man. His expressionless face always made people feel that he was overly cold. Seeing that she still didn't move, Mu Yaja said, come here. Yun Shusha was startled by this indifferent tone. She stood there in a daze, feeling a little helpless. She didn't dare to go over, afraid that he would swallow her whole. She hesitated for a moment and then slowly walked to his side. The chair was turned around, and he pulled her into his embrace. She cried out in surprise as her waist was firmly held by him, and her whole body was locked in his embrace. Chapter 996. The man bent down and bit her earlobe. His long fingers pinched her chin, forcing her to look up at him. Mu Yaja's voice was low and charming. What's with that look? It's as if I'm going to eat you alive. Because, you don't seem to be in a good mood. Mu Yaja closed his eyes slightly, and a trace of fatigue appeared on his face. I'm a little tired. He had 3 video conferences in the morning, followed by a series of tedious affairs. It was inevitable that he felt a little frustrated. Yun Shusha reached out and rubbed his temples. The moderate amount of strength was just enough to relieve his faintly tense nerves. Are you feeling better? She asked when she saw him frowning. I'm feeling better. Mu Yaja opened his eyes, grabbed her chin, and kissed the corner of her lips. Are you looking for me for something? Yun Shusha nodded. Suddenly, she shook her head. Mu Yaja laughed. He did not know what she wanted to say. Is there anything? Yun Shusha did not mention that matter to him in the end. She wanted to get rid of him and get the role in Lethal Beauty for her. However, after thinking for a while, she did not say anything. She curled her lips and smiled. It's nothing. Why? I want to see you. Can't I? Did I disturb you? Are you unhappy? Mu Yaja scratched the bridge of her nose. You can come whenever you want. After that, he bent down and kissed her lips. It was just a small bite. The tip of his tongue ran over her lips wantonly. It was a charming kiss. She pushed him away. When do you get off work? 5:00. Okay. I'll wait for you. After that, she went back to the sofa obediently. She picked up a magazine and flipped through it. She planned to wait for him to get off work and go home together. Minute Yu suddenly knocked on the door and walked in. He saw Yun Shusha sitting on the sofa. She smiled and nodded. Then, she came to him and said slowly, Boss, CEO Wang of Huafeng Appliances invited you for dinner tonight. I'm not going. But, this dinner is very important. You've already rejected him 3 times. If you reject him again, I'm afraid you won't be giving him face. This isn't good, right? Mu Yaja frowned. CEO Wang of Huafeng Electric Appliances had invited him 3 times, but he had turned him down one by one. Because, someone was waiting for him at home. Therefore, he turned down all the dinners that night. Yun Shusha looked up. Mu Yaja, go ahead. He raised his eyebrows. Can I go with you? Mu Yaja raised his eyebrows. You're willing to accompany me? Yes. On the way to the dinner. Yun Shusha sat in the front passenger seat and said nervously, This seems to be my first time attending a dinner party. I'm a little nervous. Mu Yaja, this stupid woman. It's just a dinner party. What's there to be nervous about? Yun Shusha turned her head and asked, What do you think I should do if I get forced to drink? Mu Yaja raised his eyebrows and rubbed her head lazily. He smiled and said, I'd like to see who dares to force you to drink. Yun Shusha was stunned. The so-called dinner party was a social gathering at the table. It was a clash of interests. As the CEO of Mu Group, this kind of thing was commonplace. In China, there was such an unspoken social circle. A group of people would sit at the table and talk about business and interests over wine. Chapter 997. This time, it was nothing more than the boss of a financial group who had made a wrong decision a few days ago and caused quite a bit of trouble. Hence, he quickly gathered a group of friends and booked a private room at a 5-star hotel, hoping that Mu Yaja would lend a helping hand. At the table, Yun Shusha finally understood the meaning behind Mu Yaja's words. It was different from what she had imagined. Indeed, no one dared to force her to drink. After Mu Yaja introduced her, the group of men in suits looked at her in awe. Even if she was drinking fruit juice, those men still toasted her by the glass and downed it in one gulp without any hesitation. Their actions were so nimble that it was like moving clouds and flowing water. Their gazes towards her were also filled with fear and trepidation. Alright, was she that scary? Or rather, was the big boss sitting beside her that scary? How would those people dare to force Yun Shusha to drink? They couldn't wait to compliment her. They had a favor to ask of Mu Yaja, so if they were careless and made him unhappy, their company would be completely destroyed with just one word from him. Even if they were all sprawled on the table and carried back, they wouldn't be able to force Yun Shusha to drink. After the dinner, someone enthusiastically suggested that Mu Yaja and Yun Shusha be invited to the most luxurious KTV in Beijing, Las Vegas, for a karaoke session. Yoon Shusha's heart skipped a beat. Las Vegas. It was said that it was the most expensive entertainment club in Beijing. The smallest private room inside had 2 floors and was especially luxurious. Out of curiosity, she wanted to go and see what the most luxurious entertainment club in Beijing was like. Hence, she gave Muyaja a very cute, expectant, and yearning look. Her sparkling eyes were like a little puppy trying to please him. Muyaja's eyes twitched fiercely. The thought of going to the KTV to listen to those old men wailing like ghosts and howling like wolves, those strange lights, those deafening sound effects, and those fawning faces gave him a terrible headache. However, she seemed to want to go. Muyaja said, "It can't be too late." Everyone cheered, but when they saw the boss's icy gaze, they immediately shut their mouths. Muyaja and Yoon Shusha were escorted to Las Vegas by a group of people, as if they were the stars surrounding the moon. Upon hearing that the CEO of Disheng Financial Group was coming, the manager of Las Vegas booked the biggest KTV room for them. Yoon Shusha held Muyaja's hand in amazement. She looked left and right, feeling that everything was new to her. After all, she rarely came out to play. When she was in university, it was popular for her classmates to gather and sing together, but she didn't have much time to go out and play. Muyaja glanced at her from the corner of his eyes. He saw that the corners of her lips were slightly raised. Even Muyaja, who was in a bad mood, couldn't help but be affected by her cheerful mood. Even the corners of his lips curled up slightly. Since this woman liked it, he would let her do it this time. The waiter respectfully led them into the KTV room. The moment they stepped in, Yoon Shusha let go of Muyaja's hand. Muyaja couldn't help feeling a little stunned. Looking down at his suddenly empty hand, he suddenly felt a little disappointed. Chapter 998. Yoon Shusha had never seen such a high-class entertainment venue. It had a huge LCD screen and 3 levels of high-end sofas. It was like a small opera house. There were 12 microphones alone. The luxurious facilities were amazing. Looking around, there was not only a small bar on the first floor, but there was also a wine cabinet, a small stage, 2 private bathrooms, 2 small living rooms, and a private room. After wandering around the private room, Yoon Shusha returned to Muyaja's side. Just as the men were about to start singing, Yoon Shusha looked up at Muyaja and said, "The so-called most luxurious entertainment venue in Beijing is just SOSO. Let's go back." Muyaja's lips twitched. Everyone almost fell down and vomited blood. Didn't she know that it cost 1,000 yuan an hour here? Didn't she know that in order to please Muyaja, they had already thought of their own songs along the way? This girl must be toying with them. Muyaja raised his eyebrows. "You're leaving just like that?" Yoon Shusha pursed her lips and said, "You look very tired, so I want you to rest early." Muyaja's eyes warmed. So it was because of this. Hence, he smiled. That smile was the most dazzling in the world. It was charming and moving. Let's sit for a while more. He would just take it as accompanying her. Muyaja staying behind was naturally something that everyone was happy to see. However, as he stayed behind, something happened. Although these old fellows were not young anymore, they were still full of vigor. In order to please Muyaja, they had even taken out the 18th class's signature song. Yoon Shusha could still bear it at first, but the more she listened, the more she couldn't sit still. My passion, hey. Like a fire. Ha. Burning the entire desert. Aha. At this moment, the big boss of an electronics company took off his suit jacket and held a microphone in one hand. He opened his mouth and howled like a wolf. Every time he sang a line, everyone would shout along, and the atmosphere could be considered to have reached a climax. However, on the other side, it was already covered in ice and snow. What was a lonely old man's KTV? This was probably it. Muyaja, who was sitting in the main seat, was still relatively calm. His face was still able to maintain a calm and composed expression. Yoon Shusha, on the other hand, felt as if she had been struck by lightning when this man sang. She wanted to laugh, but she couldn't show too much of an expression. Otherwise, it would be disrespectful to others. Even when he was about to sing, she still had to praise him against her will. "Aya, CEO Wang, I didn't expect you to have such a good voice." "Oh no, She suddenly regretted staying. When the song was finally over, Yoon Shusha collapsed on the sofa and heaved a sigh of relief. She could not even laugh as her stomach hurt terribly from holding it in. Then, a few people pushed the microphone to a relatively young man. It was said that he was the son of a consortium. Everyone praised him, saying that this young master sang well. This song, A Chinese Ghost Story, was earth-shattering. It was like heaven and earth, but not on earth. A Chinese ghost story? Was it Zhong Guorong's? Yoon Shusha was instantly interested. This song was very nice. It was affectionate and pleasant to the ears. It was a classic among classics. However, when the man opened his mouth, Yoon Shusha was so frightened by his voice that her legs turned to jelly. This song really gave off the feeling of a ghost when he sang it. Chapter 999. Who was the one who sang such an earth-shattering song? That's right, this man's song was simply earth-shattering. Demonic sound, devastation, devastation. It was simply a heavy blow to her body and mind. After he finished singing, Yoon Shusha clutched her chest with some internal injuries, but she still forced a smile and gave him a thumbs up. She sighed and said, "This song should only exist in the heavens." Admirable, really admirable. The man was a little embarrassed by her praise. He scratched his head and smiled embarrassedly. Thus, after sitting for half an hour, the demonic sound bombarded Yoon Shusha one after another. At first, she was a little unsettled, but gradually, she became numb. "Miss Yoon, aren't you going to sing a song for young Master Mu? Since you're here, show us what you can do." No one dared to ask Mu Yaja to sing, but this woman seemed easy to talk to, so they all encouraged her. Yoon Shusha pursed her lips and waved her hand. She smiled and said, "I'd better not sing." Mu Yaja suddenly smiled and said, "I want to hear it." Yoon Shusha was stunned and turned her head mechanically. "No way, he's just going to undermine me like this." With Mu Yaja's words, everyone became bolder and more enthusiastic. "Miss Yoon, young Master Mu has already said, just sing one song." "That's right, don't be shy, we're all on the same side." On the same side, my ass. But, Yoon Shusha suddenly walked to the karaoke machine and sat down. Since Mu Yaja wanted to hear it, then she would take care of it. She chose Mo Wonway's song, which was also Yoon Shusha's favorite and the most emotional song. The lyrics were very touching. There were many different versions of this song. She had heard Chi Chin sing it since she was young, but she preferred Mo Wonway's version. She picked up a clean microphone at the side, those men didn't spit on her, and sat on the small stage. The quiet piano music suddenly played, and the huge private room suddenly became silent. Holding the microphone, Yoon Shusha sang along with the accompaniment of the music affectionately. "A long, long time ago, you owned me, and I owned you. A long, long time ago, you left me to soar in the distant sky." The outside world was very exciting. The outside world was very helpless. "When you think the outside world is wonderful, I will give you my best wishes here. Every time the sun sets, I always look forward to you here. Although it was raining in the sky, I am still here, waiting for your return." Yoon Shusha's voice was very soft, but it faintly revealed a sense of vicissitudes, floating, ethereal and mellow, so it was very suitable for such a quiet song. She sang very emotionally and was very engrossed in the song. She was like an affectionate singer who used her soul to interpret the song. She sang this song as if it was her own song. Everyone was deeply attracted by this beautiful voice. Even Mu Yaja's eyes could not help but darken a little. The meaning of the lyrics of this song was very simple, but it was beautifully written and very sad. These people were the bosses of big companies. Some of them had inherited the family business and lived a wealthy life. When they entered society, they faced competition and were tortured to the point that they lost their pride. No matter how tired they were, they could only endure. Chapter 1000. Everyone had a disease, and that was to reminisce. It wasn't too cold at the top. Even though these people were wealthy, they all had sorrowful pasts. Thinking about this life filled with regret, sorrow, and uncertainty, it made one sigh endlessly. Even though they were all iron-blooded men and were used to the fickleness of society, no matter how hard a person's heart was, there would always be a weakness. This song couldn't help but remind them of their sorrowful pasts, and those who listened were all moved. Mu Yaja listened to the song, and his gaze gradually became blurry. He suddenly looked at Yun Shusha, who was sitting on the stage. At that moment, she was sitting there quietly, and the lights were quietly shining on her body. Half of her face was buried in the shadows and couldn't be seen clearly, but he could feel a little pain from her singing. In just a moment, her singing revealed a vulnerability that was usually hard to detect, and it made people's hearts ache. After the song was finished, the room was strangely quiet. Some of the people sitting on the sofa held their foreheads and cried silently, while others held their sour noses, their eyes filled with bitterness. Yun Shusha stood up in embarrassment. Surrounded by the lights, she couldn't see what was going on in her seat. However, just as she stepped off the stage, she was pulled into a pair of strong arms. She looked up in shock and saw Mu Yaja's handsome side profile. Her heart skipped a beat, and she instinctively followed her heart's desire and wrapped her arms around his shoulders. "Why didn't I realize before that you can sing so well?" "That's because you've never heard me sing before." Suddenly, sparse applause came from the second floor. Gradually, everyone started clapping vigorously, and they were sincerely amazed by Yun Shusha's song. Yun Shusha then realized that they were still in the KTV, so she shyly pushed Mu Yaja and muttered softly, "Hey, there's someone here." At that moment, the people upstairs saw such a heartwarming scene, so they took the opportunity to encourage, "Let's sing another song. You sing so well. Master Mu, why don't you give us some face and sing a song with Miss Yun Shusha?" Hearing this, Yun Shusha slowly raised her head. Her eyes were bright and her cheeks were red. She said longingly, "Yes. Why don't you sing a song too? I want to hear it too." As she said this, she blinked her eyes as if she had thought of something romantic. Then, she said excitedly, come on, let's sing together. Just sing I Miss You." Mu Yaja. This song was a duet between a man and a woman. It was sung by Jiu Xingze and Shu Xintian. As soon as the song was released, it reached the top of the album bestseller list. Mu Yaja turned his face away and said coolly, "I won't." He didn't want to sing those little love songs with lyrics like "I love you, you love me, you love me." Yun Shusha glared at him. How could she believe his words? "No. You definitely can. In any case, you have a management company under your name. How can a person who manages artists not know how to sing?" She even tried to go at him, but young Master Mu was dismissive of her little tricks. He glanced at her from the corner of his eyes and said firmly, "I won't sing." Yun Shusha looked aggrieved and resentful, but Mu Yaja ignored her. Chapter 1001. Who's going to sing this song with me? Mu Yaja listened to the melodious music in a daze. He looked at the MV on the screen and raised his eyebrows in disbelief. This stupid woman dared to sing a love song with someone else in front of him? She was asking for death. Mu Yaja turned his head coldly. His pair of cold and terrifying eyes swept across the crowd. His expression seemed to say, "Who dares to take the microphone?" It was as if whoever dared to sing this song with Yun Shusha would be crushed by the Mu group tomorrow morning. When the crowd saw his sharp and cold eyes, they thought of their own businesses and naturally did not dare to offend this man. How would they dare to care about Yun Shusha? The young man who sang a Chinese ghost story was about to happily take Yun Shusha's microphone when the man who was on good terms with him immediately tugged at his sleeve and signaled to Mu Yaja with his eyes. The latter looked in the direction of his gaze and saw a certain man staring at his hand expressionlessly. His gaze was as sharp as a sword. Oh my God, so scary. It was as if he wanted to kill someone. The man was shocked. His back was soaked in cold sweat and his forehead was full of black lines. He immediately withdrew his hand. Yun Shusha looked at him in confusion. He simply looked down and pretended to be dead. She suddenly realized something and slowly turned her head around. She saw the man's frosty gaze, which was as cold as an iceberg. This man was too domineering, wasn't he? He didn't want to sing with her and he didn't even give her the right to find a partner. He didn't want her to sing, but she insisted on singing. Thus, in a fit of pique, Yun Shusha sat on the sofa and started singing along with the music. One moment, she sang the boy's part in a low voice, and the next, she sang the girl's part in a high-pitched voice. She sang this little love song aggressively and fiercely, making it sound like a revolutionary march. It was as if she was about to rush to the battlefield and kill everyone in the next moment. A good song, I Miss You, was sung to I Want to Chop You. This time, it was everyone's turn to be in a world of ice and snow. Muyaja was very satisfied. When she finished singing, he didn't forget to float a sentence: "You sang very badly." Yoon Shusha was so angry that she almost threw the microphone on the sofa. When they came out of the KTV, Yoon Shusha was still a little unhappy. Muyaja walked in front with large strides, and she followed behind him slowly. She was unwilling, and her eyes were filled with resentment, like a resentful woman in the palace. "You're not even willing to sing with me, Muyaja, you're the worst." Muyaja walked in front and heard Yoon Shusha grumbling bitterly. She seemed to be complaining and complaining at the same time. That resentful look on his face was as if he had done something extremely heinous. It wasn't that he was unwilling, but he had never sung before. Since he was young, he had many opportunities to go to KTV or audiovisual entertainment centers, but he had never opened his mouth. When he grew up and took over the company, with his prominent position, who would dare to invite him to sing? Chapter 1002. Muyaja could not help curling his lips into a smile when he saw that she was still sulking. Yoon Shusha saw that there was a deeper meaning in his smile and misunderstood that he had some bad intentions or that he was unhappy with her squeamishness. Thus, she quickly put on a coquettish smile and probed, "What's wrong with you?" "Nothing." His large palm caressed her forehead. Muyaja smiled devilishly. "Are you still angry?" Yoon Shusha snorted coldly. "I just want to hear you sing. You can't even fulfill such a small wish of mine." Muyaja looked at her seriously from head to toe as though he was disgusted. Yoon Shusha's face was completely dark. "You must be tone deaf. That's why you refuse to sing." The man raised his brows slightly. "No matter how tone deaf I am, I still sing better than you." Seeing that Yoon Shusha was silent, Muyaja couldn't help but smile. He reached out slightly and pulled her into his embrace with his long arms. He caressed her forehead lovingly and smiled. "All right. Let's go home." Yoon Shusha couldn't help but smile because of his action. She felt sweet and satisfied. This man's palm wasn't as cold as it used to be. It was very warm. She was a little greedy for the warmth of his palm. Yoon Shusha took the initiative to reach out and grab his hand, interlocking their fingers tightly. Muyaja smiled and held her hand. This action warmed Yoon Shusha's heart again. She smiled and held his hand even tighter. Her heart was filled with satisfaction. She thought that it would be great if they could continue like this. She wanted time to stop at this moment when the two of them were holding hand. Late at night, it was quiet. The sky outside the window was dark. In the silence, the sound of the night breeze could be heard faintly. Xiao Chen stealthily opened the bedroom door and leaned all the way to the master bedroom. He pressed his ear against the door and listened carefully for a while before quietly sneaking back into the bedroom. Yoon Tianyu, in his casual attire, stood by the window with his hands in his trouser pockets. Xiao Chen walked behind him and said with a smile, "Daddy and Mommy are already asleep." Shush! Yoon Tianyu gave him a sidelong glance and signaled, "Go and lock the door." "Yes." Little Chen locked the bedroom door from the inside. Yoon Tianyu pulled open the floor-to-ceiling window, and the two lads jumped out of the room from the balcony. They then went around the backyard and left the villa. At the entrance of the villa, Li Hanlin's car was parked quietly. Li Hanlin was called over by Yoon Tianyu in the middle of the night. He could not hide his tiredness and yawned a few times. Yoon Tianyu opened the car door and sat in the back seat with Xiao Chen. Coincidentally, the little lad caught Li Hanlin's yawn and could not help raising a brow. "Agent Li, are you not awake yet?" Yo-Yo's voice was deep. Li Hanlin shuddered at his words. He immediately sat up straight and pretended to be energetic. "No. I'm still energetic." "That's good." Yo-Yo snorted. Xiao Chen added, "Don't drive when you're tired." Li Hanlin broke out in a cold sweat. These two lads knew a lot. "Director Yoon, where are we going?" Li Hanlin turned his head and asked with a fawning look. Yoon Tianyu leaned against the back of the seat elegantly with his arms crossed. With a cold expression, he answered, King Lin Ba. What are you going to do? Li Hanlin saw that his eyes were cold, and he seemed to be aggressive. You're in charge of driving. Chapter 1003. Xiao Ichen sneered, clenched his fists, and flexed his muscles. Uncle, we don't have much time. We have to rush back in 2 hours. Don't dawdle. Li Hanlin's lips twitched violently. He stepped on the accelerator and the car sped away. Just as the car reached the entrance of the bar, Li Hanlin was frightened by the lineup before him. Not far from the bar's entrance stood a few hooligans. They looked like delinquents. At a glance, there were about a dozen of them. They looked rather stylish. Hooligans? Li Hanlin was still in disbelief when he saw Yun Tianyu push open the door and get out of the car with Xiao Ichen. Director Yun, where are you going? Wait in the car. Don't follow me. Yun Tianyu turned around and gave this order. Even though Li Hanlin was full of doubts, he still obeyed the order and waited in the car. Yun Tianyu and Xiao Ichen walked over. Li Dongqiang saw them and immediately welcomed them with a fawning smile. Little brother, you're here. Why are there so many people here? Yun Tianyu frowned, clearly surprised. Li Dongqiang pursed his lips and smilingly said, I'm afraid that we don't have enough manpower. It's okay, we're all brothers. It's no big deal to have more people here. It's a show of strength. He paused, raised his eyebrows, and carefully probed, Little brother, are you looking for me to teach someone a lesson? Yun Tianyu suddenly lowered his head expressionlessly and casually took out a Givenchy wallet. Li Dongqiang's eyes widened at the sight. This wallet was exquisitely made and seemed to be a branded one. It must be worth a lot. Looking at the thick stack of cash in the wallet, Li Dongqiang's mouth watered even more. This little guy was really not simple. He carried so much cash with him everywhere. Li Dongqiang's eyes involuntarily revealed a greedy look. Yun Tianyu coldly glanced at him, and Li Dongqiang guiltily retracted his gaze. Li Dongqiang took out a check that had already been filled in but had yet to be signed. However, when Li Dongqiang received it and saw the generous amount on the check, he was shocked. His mouth watered. So much. You think it's too much? Yun Tianyu raised a brow. It's nothing. Money can only be too little. How can it be too much? Li Dongqiang said with a flattering smile. At the same time, he secretly verified the authenticity of the check. You don't have to look at it. Do you think I'll give you a fake check? Yun Tianyu seemed to have seen through his suspicions. The check hasn't been signed yet. Yun Tianyu gave a concise reply. Once you've settled this matter, we'll be even. Good. Then, what orders do you have? Li Dongqiang rubbed his hands and asked. Yun Tianyu suddenly fished out a Sony DV from his backpack and tossed it to him. Li Dongqiang caught it and lowered his head to look at the DV in his hand. He was a little confused. This is, cut the crap and listen to my instructions, he ordered. Li Dongqiang didn't dare to say anything. It was late at night. Some youths began to stagger out of the bar one after another. The unrestrained nightlife was over. It was time to return to the nest. Lu Jingtian was already dead drunk by the time she was helped out. Chapter 1004. Many of Yun Shusha's fans even meticulously watched every detail of the show and made gifs of all the little tricks she had done to Yun Shusha, which went viral on Weibo. Following this, netizens began to denounce her with righteous indignation. Many of them even dug out her family background. As a newcomer who had just debuted, her acting skills had always been questioned. Ostracizing fellow actors and bullying newcomers, netizens dug up all kinds of things about her past. As such, the army of public opinion crushed her pitiful fan club overnight. No matter how the PR team behind her tried to clear her name, the netizens did not seem to buy it. Instead, they accused her of using Yun Shusha to hype herself up. Hype. She used Yun Shusha to hype herself up. She was really wronged in this regard. Indeed, artistes needed exposure. Many would even use scandals to hype themselves up. Lu Jingtian was different, though. She had always been very concerned about her image in front of the public. Her team also intended to create an image of her as a pure starlet, trying their best to cover up her dark spots so that she could present a better side to the public. Unfortunately, she did not live up to expectations. Her scandals exploded on the internet one after another. It was simply one after another, too many to enumerate. Lu Jingtian has no acting skills to speak of. She's not even worthy of being called a vase. She's so ugly and unrecognizable. One look at her nose and eyes and you can tell that she's based on a baby. The key is that she hasn't done the surgery yet. How can she compare to Shusha? She's quite scheming, huh? Doge, at the very least, vases are good-looking and exquisite. How can that ugly woman be called a vase? Don't insult a vase. Is it that exaggerated? I've seen the trailer for The Green Apple, and she looks pretty good in it. That's just makeup, okay? I saw her barefaced face in a candid photo taken at the airport. It's unspeakably ugly. She looks like an old woman without makeup. The reason why she can get so many resources when she debuted is because her father is a senior executive in Huanyu. This is a classic example of opening the back door. I heard that when Lu Jingtian debuted in the past, she wanted to tie her name to Jiyu Xingze for publicity purposes. Jiyu Xingze didn't even look at her. Nonsense. If Jiyu Xingze and Lu Jingtian are tied together to create hype, it'll be so degrading. Jiyu Xingze is wise. If Lu Jingtian uses him to create hype, he'll lose millions of fans. Auntie Lu, you're so ugly. On Weibo, forums, and Tiebar, there were different versions of her scandal every day. In fact, there were plenty of actresses in the entertainment industry who were more scheming than her. They usually kept a low profile and carefully hid their flaws. Alas, this time, she could not avoid it because she was truly stupid. The Green Apple had not yet been released, but it had already gathered a large number of fans of the original novel. As the winter-summer couple, many fans of the original novel were very supportive of Jiyu Xingze and Yun Shusha being a couple. Lu Jingtian had interfered and ostracized Yun Shusha on the show. Was she not inviting criticism for herself? Chapter 1005. As a result, she was in a bad mood these few days. She spent several nights at the bar, feeling dispirited. Her friend helped her to the door when she suddenly felt her insides churning. Pushing her friend away, she stumbled to the entrance of the alley and vomited while leaning against the wall. Her friend frowned. Accompanying this willful Missy out for a drink was really a tough task. He walked to the intersection and hailed a taxi, but she was nowhere to be seen. He could not help but feel strange. When he reached the entrance of the alley, a fishy smell hit him in the face. He immediately covered his nose and mouth and shone his phone's flashlight on the ground, only to see a puddle of vomit on the ground. Beside it, a bag had fallen to the ground. He picked up the bag. It belonged to her, but she was nowhere to be found. Where did she go? He looked all around but couldn't find her. He was immediately frustrated. A black car sped along the road. Li Dongqiang's eyes darted to the rearview mirror as he drove. Yun Tianyu sat in the front passenger seat while Xiao Chen sat in the back seat. Beside him was the unconscious Lu Jingtian. She lay limp in the seat with her hands and legs tied tightly with ropes. Her eyes and mouth were covered with a black cloth. Li Dongqiang was deeply shocked. Is this a kidnapping? How exciting. This lad is so daring at such a young age. Although he was in the triad, he was, at best, a hooligan. He had done many petty thefts, but there were some things he dared not do. Even though he had killed people before, they were all civilians. He looked at this woman, who was dressed in branded clothes and seemed to be rich, and could not help but feel nervous. He was a typical bully and feared the strong. He was most afraid of offending big shots that he should not offend. He had learned his lesson from offending Yun Shusha the last time. Thus, he asked, if we do this, won't we blow things up? What are you afraid of? Yun Tianyu gave him a sidelong glance and casually asked, you're so timid, yet you're still in the triad. Li Dongqiang replied resentfully, although I'm in the triad, I still haven't made a name for myself. I have to take a detour whenever I meet those big shot. At this moment, he was completely unaware that there was a major character sitting beside him. Although this big shot was a little young, Yun Tianyu snorted and did not bother with him again. Li Dongqiang still wanted to say something, but Yun Tianyu cut him off impatiently. Cut the crap. I'm letting you do this, so naturally, I can ensure that nothing happens to you. His tone was like that of a king, shocking Li Dongqiang. Were all kids these days so powerful? His methods were even more professional than his. Xiao Ichen, who was standing behind him, seemed to have transformed into Yo-Yo's little fanboy. This little brother of his was really amazing. His style of doing things was just like his father, ruthless and merciless. He liked it. He turned to look at Lu Jingtian and snorted. He didn't like people who bullied his mommy, therefore, he would not show any mercy. The car sped to a stop on East Street. Li Dongqiang, who was guarding a gambling den, alighted from the car and carried her into a small, dark room inside. As soon as he entered the room, Li Dongqiang threw him onto the bed. The bed was made of metal and was very hard. Li Dongqiang did not go easy on her. With a toss and a bump, she woke up with a start. However, perhaps because she had drunk so much, she was still drunk and had yet to recover her senses. Chapter 1006. A basin of cold water was the first to splash on her. The piercing coldness made her more clear-headed, and she opened her eyes abruptly. The black cloth covering her eyes fell off. Her vision slowly overlapped and became clear again. The dark room was airtight, and only a weak chandelier was lit. Hence, she could not see clearly where she was at that moment. The chandelier was an ordinary chandelier. It swayed gently from time to time, causing the room to flicker with light and shadow. It reminded one of the classic scenes in horror movies. Lu Jingtian shuddered in fright and sat up abruptly on the bed. Unaware that her limbs were tied up, she lost her balance and rolled off the bed. "Ua!" she cried out in pain. Li Dongqiang glanced at her coldly and signaled with his eyes. His men walked forward and threw her back on the bed. "Ua, ua, ua." She opened her mouth in shock, but it was gagged, so she could not make any sound. She could only whimper as if she were begging for mercy. Yun Tianyu and Xiao Ichen entered the room as well. Li Dongqiang immediately ordered someone to bring a sofa chair over. Yun Tianyu sat on it and slowly raised his head to meet Lu Jingtian's frightened eyes. When Lu Jingtian saw Yun Tianyu and little Ichen, for some reason, her fear faded a little. It was hard for people to be wary of those weaker than them. She was still wondering who had kidnapped her here, but when she saw Yun Tianyu and little Ichen, she was no longer so afraid. Instead, her tense emotions relaxed a little. Still, it was not without surprises. How could it be these two rascals? Were they the ones who tied her up and brought her here? How did these two rascals manage to do it? What did these strange, ferocious-looking men have to do with the two children? She was full of doubts. In her eyes, Yun Tianyu and little Ichen were merely 7-year-old children. They had not even graduated from kindergarten, so they could not do anything to her. She only saw this inexplicable scene as a farce. Alas, she was wrong. Some people looked weak, but they were not necessarily weak. On the contrary, it could be very powerful. Yun Tianyu glanced at her. His eyes were extremely cold and his face was filled with disgust. He stared at her and asked, "Are you awake?" His voice was so cold that it was as if 10,000 feet of ice had frozen over. Lu Jingtian nervously shook her head subconsciously, but when she realized what he was asking, she hesitantly nodded her head. Little Ichen sneered from the side. "Bad woman." Lu Jingtian was infuriated. Just as she was about to lash out at him, she realized that her mouth was gagged and could only let out a few muffled moans. Yun Tianyu ordered, "Let her talk." Thus, Li Dongqiang walked forward and removed the gag from her mouth. Lu Jingtian was finally able to speak, and the first thing she said was explosive. "Hey, you two brats, what are you trying to do? Why did you tie me up and bring me here? What kind of game are you playing with me?" She was originally dead drunk. After vomiting out a stomach full of filth, she had just sobered up a little when she was knocked out by a stick. When he woke up, he was splashed with a basin of ice water. Naturally, he became more clear-headed. However, the alcohol did not completely subside. She spoke very harshly in her drunken state. Chapter 1007. "Hurry and loosen the rope. Let me go home," she demanded fiercely, purely trying to scare them. Yun Tianyu smiled. "The game isn't over yet. How can I let you go home?" Lu Jingtian was taken aback by his mature tone and cold words. "If you two rascals continue to mess around, I'll tell your daddy. Ha. Yun Tianyu sneered and then leisurely said, fine. Go ahead and sue them. She was stunned. Aren't you afraid that your daddy will spank you? She clearly did not realize what was going on, so she was at a loss for a moment. What were these two rascals up to? Xiao Chen, isn't she disgusting? Yun Tianyu suddenly turned his head and asked. Xiao Chen spat, she's disgusting. He paused for a moment before adding, anyone who bullies mommy is guilty of the most heinous crime. Finally, he used the right idiom. This was not the main point, though. The main point was that there was no need to hide the murderous look in Xiao Chen's eyes. She was frightened by his gaze. What are you guys trying to do? Thanks to you, mommy has 32 wounds on her body. Today, I'll pay you back double. With that, Xiao Chen stepped forward and grabbed his mother's hair. In the past, he was extremely disdainful of using such despicable means like grabbing someone's hair. However, his younger brother said that he would give her a taste of her own medicine. Since his mommy's hair was ripped off, there was no need for him to be merciful. He wanted this evil woman to have a taste of the pain of having her hair ripped off. Lu Jingtian shrieked in pain at the sharp pain coming from her scalp. What are you guys trying to do? Let go. It's painful. Xiao Chen did not waste any more words. He grabbed her hair and threw her to the floor. She did not know where this kid got his strength from. She weighed more than 50 kilograms, yet he lifted her with one hand. What are you guys doing? She shrieked. Her ear-piercing scream reverberated through the room. So noisy. Yun Tianyu frowned in disgust. Li Dongqiang immediately understood and stepped forward to cover her mouth again. Xiao Chen said angrily, bad woman, you know pain too. But I saw that when you bullied my mommy, you didn't hold back either. Lu Jingtian continued to whimper, as if she finally understood that the two were here for revenge and realized the seriousness of the matter. Xiao Chen was about to make a move when he saw the woman's face, which was filled with fear and hatred, and suddenly felt awkward. He suddenly put down his fist and returned to Yo-Yo's side with a gloomy expression. He pouted and looked unhappy. What's wrong? Yo-Yo glanced at her. Disgusting. My hands are dirty, Xiao Chen said with a frown. Besides, if I touch her, her bones will fall apart. These words were not wrong. Xiao Chen's punch was equivalent to 80% of a grown man's strength. What kind of concept was that? If he punched her more than 20 times, she would surely have a few broken bones. Moreover, he was a man. It was rather ungentlemanly for a man to hit a woman. He was not like that Song Yunshi, who was ungentlemanly. Lu Jingtian inexplicably heaved a sigh of relief when Xiao Chen stopped hitting her. Yun Tianyu glanced at Li Dongqiang and said, you can go ahead. Lu Jingtian's eyes widened in horror. She did not know what was in store for her. Chapter 1008. I'll wait for you outside. With that, he left with Xiao Chen. Li Dongqiang let out a sinister laugh and slowly took a few steps toward Lu Jingtian. The fear in her heart increased exponentially. Initially, she thought that this was a prank by the two children, but now, she no longer thought so. He walked up to her, slowly squatted down, and removed the black cloth from her mouth. She got the chance to speak and immediately asked in horror, what are you trying to do? What am I trying to do? I'm going to do you. He grinned and spoke vulgarly. She was stunned for a moment, only to see him stand up and unbuckle his belt with one hand. What are you doing? You're raping me. Don't you dare do anything rash. Chimph, he ignored her. Lu Jingtian's lips trembled as her eyes darted around in panic. She suddenly understood the current situation. If she were to maintain her overbearing attitude from before, she would not be able to escape. It was just a matter of dying a little faster. She did not understand what these two rascals wanted to do to her, but the murderous look in Yun Tianyu's eyes was definitely not a prank. She raised her head and looked at Li Dongqiang with a smile. How much do you want? Li Dongqiang froze. Those two rascals gave you the money, right? That's why you. Let me tell you, I have a background. My father is powerful and influential. You'd better not offend me, otherwise, you'll regret it. This was the only possibility she could think of. Xiao Chen was rich. Mu Yaja would usually give him tens of thousands of yuan as pocket money. How much did he give you? I'll give you double. This way. Can you let me off? She was so flustered that she could not speak coherently. Sure. If you can fork out double the amount he gave me, I'll let you off. He. Li Dongqiang was naturally not one to make a losing deal. He squatted down as if to negotiate with her. She calmed down and asked, how much did he give you? He took out the check from his trouser pocket and showed it to her. Lu Jingtian was stunned when she saw the words written in Chinese. Impossible. Where did he get so much money? Lu Jingtian chuckled. I think you've been fooled by those two kids. Think about it, they're barely 15 years old. Do you really think he can give you so much? She only suspected that Xiao Chen was the one who gave her the money. She did not suspect Yo-Yo at all. Li Dongqiang raised his eyebrows. That's so much money. I can't afford it. In fact, if it was in the past, he would not have believed that a child could take out so much money. However, he had seen this child's strength before. Lu Jingtian was taken aback. Are you dumb? This piece of paper must be fake. It's just a fake check, and you're treating it like a treasure. He. What I'm giving you is real money. It's not something a fake check can compare to. Then, this is the number on the check. If you give it to me now, I'll let you go. Lu Jingtian was speechless for a moment before she flew into a rage out of humiliation. How can he have so much money? It's 7 digits, not thousands or tens of thousands. Chapter 1009. Lu Jingtian was infuriated and annoyed by his humiliation. She cried out indignantly, my dad is rich. Let me call him, he can fork out that much money right away. Smack. He gave her a tight slap across the face, causing her face to turn to the side. Are you King kidding me? Call your dad. Then, call the police to arrest me. He. Woman, you have some tricks up your sleeve. He did not want to waste any more words with her. With a look, 2 of his men immediately stepped forward. One of them grabbed her chin tightly, while the other unscrewed the bottle in his hand and poured the drugged drink into her mouth. She struggled, but she did not have the chance to resist at all. Gulp. 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 Cough. 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 Blurg, she choked badly, and the sweet drink overflowed from her mouth and nose. She raised her head with reddened eyes and glared at him. What did you make me drink? He. Don't worry, you'll find out soon enough. When the drug takes effect, the few of us won't be enough to cure you. It was the strongest drug in the black market, passion hunting powder. The drug, which was used to deal with Yun Shusha, was now being used to deal with Lu Jingtian. A few minutes later, she felt dizzy all of a sudden, followed by a strange sensation coming from her body. Her body swayed slightly, and she felt her legs go limp. Not only that, a certain part of her body was acting up. She clamped her legs together and tried her best to hold it in as she perspired profusely. Her breathing suddenly quickened. The strange thing was that she had gulped down so much drink earlier, but her throat was very dry. Lu Jingtian was the spoiled and arrogant missy of a rich family. She had never seen such despicable tricks in society. Therefore, she thought that there was some kind of poison in the drink. It was only when she felt an inexplicable emptiness in her lower abdomen that she realized that the drink had been drug. Lu Jingtian's chest heaved up and down. Under the constant stimulation of the drug, she felt a strange heat and her whole body went limp. The scenery in front of her eyes began to blur, and under a burst of dizziness, she couldn't even see Li Dongqiang's face clearly. She shook her head, but it did not matter if she did not shake. Instead, she fell headfirst to the ground. She did not feel much pain even when her head hit the floor. It was as if she was lying on a bed of cotton, and she felt as if she was floating in the air. She began to feel an urgent need to fill the emptiness. Gradually, she lost her consciousness and her gaze became blurry. Huff. Huff. I want. It's so hot. It's so hot. As she spoke, she giggled softly. Help me, please. It's so hot, and I feel so empty. Boo-hoo, Lu Jingtian's exquisite makeup was exceptionally seductive. Her beautiful eyes were hazy, and her face was flushed with a coquettish blush. Her red lips, which seemed to be budding, were especially seductive when they opened and closed. The drug had completely taken effect. It made her look like a delicate poppy flower that bloomed unscrupulously, almost mesmerizing his eyes. When the drug kicked in, he untied the ropes binding her limbs. Lu Jingtian looked at him in a daze as fine beads of sweat appeared on her forehead. Chapter 10:10. She lazily leaned against the bedside. Her coquettish look made Li Dongqiang's heart beat wildly. Gulp, he swallowed hard and was stunned for a moment before he suddenly remembered what Yun Tianyu had instructed him to do. He quickly turned on the camcorder and aimed it at the woman, who was trying her best to seduce him. The men beside him also stared unblinkingly at the coquettish woman in front of them. Their eyes narrowed with lust. Oh, God! It turned out that their boss had called them over for such a good thing. This was a lucrative job. At first, they thought that it was going to be a fling. Unexpectedly, he. Li Dongqiang walked over, squatted down, and reached out to pinch her hot and flushed cheeks. She pounced on him at once, wrapped her arms around his waist, and threw herself on top of him. She might have used too much strength, for he was suddenly pushed to the ground by her. She sat on top of him, grabbed his collar, and kissed him. The scent of her expensive perfume assaulted his nostrils. She kissed his cheeks, nose, and chin as her hands impatiently tickled his body. Li Dongqiang felt his whole body heating up. This was a blessing in disguise. It was not that he had never played with women before, but compared to this woman, it was unbearably vulgar. Lu Jingtian was not as pretty as Yun Shisha, but to Li Dongqiang, she was still a first-class stunner. The young man holding the camcorder could not help but feel his hands tremble as he looked at the hot scene before him. He was inevitably distracted and did not aim the camera properly several times. A few of them even took out their phones to take pictures. Lu Jingtian had no idea what she was doing. She only felt that hugging him was not enough to relieve the raging waves in her body. She followed her primitive instincts and moved step by step. Alas, she was still young and inexperienced, so how would she know what to do? Li Dongqiang, on the other hand, was so aroused that he could not bear it. His body was burning with fire, and he completely lost his patience. With a low growl, he flipped over and took the initiative. In no time at all, he took off her clothes. The fiery scenes were all captured by the camera. The young man on the side muttered vulgarly, "This woman is really coquettish." That eye-piercing scene was driving the subordinates who were waiting at the side crazy. However, Boss hadn't finished enjoying it yet, so he naturally couldn't rush it. They had to do it one by one. In the casino, although it wasn't prime time, the 4 floors of the hall were still bustling with activity. Mixed with cheers and curses, it was an impassioned atmosphere. This was one of the biggest casinos on East Street. People often went bankrupt here overnight. Of course, there were also some lucky people who gained great wealth. However, in a casino like this, there were very few lucky people. After obtaining a huge fortune, most people would greedily throw themselves into the next battlefield with a fluke mentality. However, after a few twists and turns, they would often end up disappointed. No matter what your identity is, be it a boss or a commoner, as long as you have money, you can walk into this treasury and bet on your life. The casino was a unique cylindrical building. The ceiling and walls were classical and magnificent, just like a luxurious palace. Chapter 10:11. However, very few people dared to place bets at this table. Hence, to sit at this table, one had to bet at least 5 million yuan, and the chips would continue to rise as the game progressed. At this moment, however, no one was paying attention to whether someone was placing bets at this table. Everyone's eyes were on a little lad in a black shirt. This little boy, who was only 6 or 7 years old, had exchanged chips from the dealer half an hour ago. At that time, he only had a few 100,000 yuan worth of chips. The moment he entered the gambling hall, he walked to the French roulette with ease and placed tens of thousands of yuan on it. His nonchalant expression made it seem as if gambling, to him, was just a simple game. Xiao Ichen stood nervously beside Yo-Yo. Earlier, he was bored waiting outside the door, so he said that he wanted to take a look around the casino. Seeing that it was interesting, he exchanged chips to relieve his boredom. At that time, no one paid much attention to him. Most of them thought that he was just an extremely naive little lad who dared to enter the casino after stealing so much money from somewhere. Gambling at such a young age, he was truly a wastrel. A kind-hearted person stepped forward to persuade him, but Yo-Yo merely replied unhurriedly, "He. I'm just casually playing." Casually playing, this was a slang in the casino. Usually, those who said this were here to challenge the place. Which one of the people standing here hadn't gambled for more than 10 years? Without so many years of experience, who would dare to roll up their sleeves and roll the dice here? This little lad with a mere few 100,000 yuan, which was not even enough to open the table, dared to spout such arrogant words here. He was young and did not know the rules, yet he wanted to challenge the place? What a joke! Many people mocked and ridiculed him, but Yo-Yo merely crossed his arms and leaned lazily against the table. His lips curled into a devilish smile as he pushed all the chips to the table, making people feel guilty. Staking it all on one throw? The banker's eyes could not help but reveal a trace of contempt. The roulette spun once, and everyone turned pale with fright. Unexpectedly, Yo-Yo won the first round and earned a lot of money. Yu accepted the bet without a change in his expression. His face was still wearing a nonchalant smile. His expression was calm, and yet, it was not a smile. He looked at the money he had won and shook his head helplessly. He said mildly, "I was just lucky." Under everyone's dumbfounded gaze, he immediately threw all his capital and the chips he won on the table, as if he was going to continue the game. The banker looked at him and thought to himself that it was just a fluke. There was no reason for him to continue winning. Everyone placed their bets, and after a few rounds, Yo-Yo's chips became more and more impressive. In the beginning, the crowd looked down on him, but now they were all following him to place their bets. The fiery atmosphere in the gambling hall was a sharp contrast. Although he had won a lot of chips, the child's face was still calm. He only smiled and played with the chips in his hand. The banker's forehead was sweating, and he didn't dare to make a move. More and more gamblers followed behind Yo-Yo, but the banker still did not place his bet. Yo-Yo suddenly looked up. He raised a finger lazily and shook it gently. He said mildly, "You can't." Chapter 10-12. He had been in the casino for more than 20 years and had been playing since he was 10 years old. This lad was clearly trying to humiliate him. However, despite his anger, it was an undeniable fact that he had lost to a child. He had never lost so thoroughly in all his years of playing. He did not even have the will to fight anymore. The dealer pushed down his chips and simply admitted defeat. Yo-Yo looked at him with a smile. A dealer in a purple uniform walked up to him and carefully collected all the chips he had won. Xiao Ichen whispered in his ear in disbelief, "Yo-Yo, are you that good? You actually won more than a few million." Yo-Yo glanced at him from the corner of his eyes and hooked his finger at him. Xiao Ichen leaned over. Yo-Yo said flatly, "Idiot, I cheated." Xiao Ichen, in the small dark room, the atmosphere was heated. It was the time for endless battle. The first time was naturally accompanied by pain, but compared to the seemingly endless emptiness and stimulation in Lu Jingtian's body, it was nothing. With the guidance of the drug, she seemed to have turned into a flirtatious vixen. She twisted her body seductively and cooperated fully no matter what position he took. Li Dongqiang was the first to admit defeat and was somewhat helpless. It had to be said that this drug was really very strong. Even if it was a jade maiden, it could also turn her into a slut. While he was panting, Lu Jingtian came up to him again, panting heavily. The impatience on her face showed that she had no intention of giving up. Li Dongqiang did not want to do it at first, but the drug had yet to wear off, so he could not push her away no matter how hard he tried. Moreover, he had to take into account his male dignity in front of his underlings. Thus, he secretly took a pill, regained his manhood, and pounced on her anxiously. His breathing was chaotic. His breathing was disorderly. The scene was especially unbearable for a moment. The small iron bed kept shaking and creaking. Under the violent movements, it made a sinister sound. This was the rhythm of squeezing them all dry. Lu Jingtian had no idea what earth-shattering thing she was doing. Neither was she aware of the lewd expression on her face, nor was she aware of her high-pitched moans. It took a full 2 hours for the drug to wear off. 5 to 6 men took turns to do it before the drug finally wore off. Wasn't this drug too powerful? Wasn't this the rhythm of wanting to destroy him? The others were also exhausted, and the room was filled with the sound of panting. When things calmed down, Li Dongqiang felt that his waist was about to collapse. He threw himself onto the bed. His waist was sore and painful. It was simply unbearable. It seemed that this kind of thing should really be controlled. Now that his vitality was greatly damaged, it seemed that he would not be able to recuperate for 3 to 5 days. On the other side, the effects of the drug had subsided, and the fire in her body had mostly been vented. Lu Jingtian finally regained her senses, but when she saw the unbearable scene before her, she was first stunned before her face turned ghastly pale. What happened? Without waiting for her to react, a scream escaped from her throat. You guys. She held her face and screamed continuously. Suddenly, she realized that she was naked. Looking down, she realized that she was completely naked. This frightened her even more. Chapter 10:13. Only then did she realize with a start that she had lost her virginity. Oh, God, what's going on? She wanted to scream, but she was too frightened to do so. She blinked her eyes, and large droplets of tears rolled down her cheeks at once. What's going on? She hurriedly grabbed a piece of clothing from the side. She did not care whose it was, as long as it could at least cover her body. She was so frightened that her body kept retreating backward. Her pale face suddenly turned purple as her lips trembled uncontrollably. Humiliation. She felt a bone-chilling humiliation. She came from a well-to-do family, and her upbringing was very strict. Therefore, even when she grew up, she was like other girls who liked to play and make friends, but she always stuck to her bottom line. Her father taught her that a girl's chastity was the most important thing. But now, everything had been destroyed. She had actually lost her virginity to this group of ruffians at the bottom of society. Lu Jingtian's whole body trembled as she kept sizing up Li Dongqiang, who was sitting at the side and panting heavily. Her heart sank to the bottom of the valley. Women always had many beautiful fantasies about their first time. Alas, she would never have thought that her first time would be cruelly sullied by these ruffians in front of her. Looking at Li Dongqiang, looking at his dark skin, ugly and ferocious appearance, his body full of fat, and especially that fat and oily big belly, she was even more disgusted. At this moment, her face was as contorted as it could be. She bit her lower lip angrily, and the humiliation was so deep that it bled. ********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************* Chen cursed the moment she opened her mouth, using the most insulting words she could think of. Smack. Li Dongqiang gave her a slap. Slut. Who was the one who stuck to me just now? What's the point of being a B******? D*** mn it. Shameless, he scolded. She held her burning cheek aggrievedly. Her eyes were red and swollen, and they were bloodshot as she glared at them hatefully. If you didn't use any underhanded means, do you think I'd be interested in you? All of you look like pigs. Shameless. B******. Lu Jingtian seemed to have lost her rationality as she let loose a torrent of abuse. Lu Jingtian scrambled to put on her clothes. Looking at the bruises all over her body, she was in a sorry state. She suddenly couldn't hold it in any longer and broke down in tears. She covered her face and deeply felt that she had no face to see anyone. Woo woo. You bunch of beasts, scum. I hate you to death. The door suddenly opened. Yun Tianyu and Xiao Ichen walked in. Everyone in the room had put on their clothes, and the scene seemed calm. However, from the redness on their faces and the lingering charm in the air, Yun Tianyu knew that they had just experienced an intense battle. He laughed, but his expression was cold. Have you enjoyed yourself to your heart's content? Asked the boy in a calm and unhurried tone. Have you had enough fun? This brat. Chapter 10:14. It has nothing to do with my mommy. Xiao Ichen coldly snorted. Bad woman, you're the one who bullied my mommy first. We're just returning the favor. Lu Jingtian only felt embarrassed and ashamed, but more than that, she flew into a rage out of humiliation. Yo-Yo's cold and mocking gaze almost drove her crazy. She completely lost her rationality. If she could, she really wanted to strangle him and tear his hateful face apart. She really couldn't wait to make these two brats disappear from her sight. B***st* road. She rolled off the bed and pounced on Yun Tianyu. Yun Tianyu, however, did not move. He was not afraid of this crazy woman at all. Alas, she had forgotten about the chaotic battle she had just gone through. Just as her toes touched the ground, she felt her legs give way and fell to the ground with a plop. Her limbs were as heavy as lead, and she could not even lift her wrist. She was filled with resentment. Yun Tianyu smiled coldly and took a few steps toward her until he was right in front of her. He lowered his head and looked at her from above, admiring the changing expressions on her face. Humiliation, resentment, madness, pain, despair. Everything was in his eyes. He admitted that his method was indeed cruel. However, this was the only way to appease the hatred in his heart. He would never forgive anyone who touched his reverse scale. A pitiful person must have something to hate. Yun Tianyu told Li Dongqiang, "Send her back." Li Dongqiang nodded, but he was still panting heavily. He had yet to calm down and was on the brink of exhaustion. Yun Tianyu turned to leave, but he suddenly thought of something. He turned back and bent slightly. His cold and unfathomable eyes met with Lu Jingtian's dazed ones. "Don't blame me for being ruthless if you dare to make a fuss about what happened today." Lu Jingtian was stunned. This child had a charisma that made one unable to look him in the eye. That pair of cold eyes actually oppressed her to the point that she couldn't breathe. "I'll let you off today, but if you dare to bully my mommy again." Yun Tianyu paused and narrowed his eyes. "Do you believe me? With just a word from me, the entire Lu clan will die without a burial ground overnight. Do you believe it? With just a word from me, the entire Lu clan will die without a burial ground overnight." These extremely bold words seemed to come from the mouth of an emperor who could summon the wind and summon the rain. Lu Jingtian's mouth was agape, but even after the two left, she still could not regain her senses. The fear in his heart was suddenly magnified. Lu residence. By the time she hailed a cab back to the Lu residence, it was almost dawn. She held back her tears and tightly clenched her fists. No matter how hard she tried to suppress herself, her shoulders couldn't stop trembling. She felt like a mermaid. Every step she took felt like she was walking on the edge of a sword. It was unbearably painful. She walked to the door and slowly pushed it open, only to be greeted by a brightly lit room. She was stunned and stood rooted to the ground. She saw Lu Buosheng sitting on the sofa in the spacious living room. It seemed that he had been waiting for a long time. She was stunned for a few seconds. When she came to her senses, she quickly lowered her head and hurried upstairs. "Stop right there," Lu Buosheng bellowed majestically. Chapter 10:15. She shuddered and turned around with trembling lips. Pursing her lips, she did not bother to raise her head and only called out, "Dad." Usually, when she returned home late, her father would be long asleep. Why did she have to bump into him tonight? He asked coldly, "It's so late. Where did you go? Why are you only back now? Do you still know that this house exists?" She felt countless grievances and despair choking her throat, making it difficult for her to speak. She once again recalled what had happened tonight, which made her feel extremely humiliated. The tearing pain deep in her body reminded her of the shame and anger she felt. Resisting the urge to break down, she said in a muffled voice, "I went out to play." She did not want anyone to know about this. Even her closest family did not want them to know about it. She was utterly disgraced. She was too ashamed to face anyone. If her father were to know that she had given her virginity to a group of unknown hooligans, he would be so angry that he would kill her. It was simply a nightmare. It was a stain that she could not erase no matter how hard she tried. "You went to the bar again?" Lu Buosheng snorted, clearly extremely dissatisfied. He was about to lecture her when she hurriedly said, "Dad, I'm tired. I'm tired, I'll go back to my room to sleep first." She tried to avoid him, but her father angrily said, "Stop right there. Did I allow you to leave?" She stood there awkwardly, sweating profusely from anxiety. "You want to leave before I'm done talking? Is this how you treat your elders? What time is it now? You only came back from playing. Do you still have this house in your eyes? As he lectured her, he said, What are you waiting for? It was clear that he was going to lecture her. How could she face him in her current state, though? She gritted her teeth and stayed where she was. Lu Buosheng was even angrier. What? I told you to come over, why aren't you moving? Have you grown wings after being a year older? What are you waiting for? His sternness made her tear up even more. She suddenly started sobbing softly. She felt so embarrassed. If Lu Buosheng were to see her like this, she would lose her last bit of dignity. Lu Buosheng got even angrier. He suddenly got up, walked up to her, and grabbed her arm. Lu Jingtian stumbled and fell right in front of him. What he saw in front of him, however, greatly shocked him. Her exposed arms, shoulders, and collarbones were densely covered with all kinds of ambiguous marks of strangulation and kisses. Looking at her face, it was red and swollen. It was clear that she had been raped. When Lu Buosheng saw everything clearly, he subconsciously slapped him in the face. Lu Jingtian could not take it anymore and fell to the ground. She lowered her head and let her hair cover her face in the shadows. You! What the hell are you doing? How did a girl end up like this? Lu Buosheng was exasperated at her failure to live up to his expectations. His first reaction was that he had no idea who she was fooling around with again. Lu Buosheng had high expectations for her, and he had always hoped that she could marry into a prestigious family. Prestigious families valued a girl's innocence the most. The way she was acting really disappointed him. Lu Buosheng's rage made her feel ashamed and aggrieved. She held her face as her lips trembled. Large droplets of tears rolled down her pale cheeks, making one's heart ache for her. Chapter 10:16. Lu Buosheng's rage made her feel ashamed and aggrieved. She held her face as her lips trembled. Large droplets of tears rolled down her pale face, making one's heart ache for her. Lu Buosheng's heart ached as he looked at her haggard and disheveled appearance. He reached out to help her up, but she avoided his advances. She avoided his action, though. Suppressing her grievances, she got up from the floor and ran upstairs without looking back. Bang! The door was slammed shut. Lu Buosheng lowered his head to look at his burning palm. He had used a lot of strength in his anger earlier. In a moment of anger, he had given her a slap. Now, he was filled with regret. Lu Buosheng went upstairs to Lu Jingtian's room, only to hear her sobbing. Worried, he knocked on the door, but the crying stopped abruptly. Tian, it's Daddy's fault. I shouldn't have hit you. Open the door and tell Daddy what's going on, okay? Don't bother about me. Go away, just go away, she cried. Lu Buosheng furrowed his brows, his heart burning with anxiety. Alas, she did not mention it to him at all. He sighed. Since it had already happened, there was no point in pursuing how it happened. He would properly interrogate her about this matter after she calmed down a little. Lu Buosheng's footsteps gradually faded away. Only then did Lu Jingtian burst into tears. She walked into the bathroom and scrubbed her body over and over again. However, no matter how many times she used the shower gel and scrubbed her body vigorously, as if trying to scrape off a layer of skin, she still felt that her body was so dirty that it could not be washed clean. Thus, she hugged her body and squatted in the bathtub, crying helplessly. She thought that this matter would be over just like that. However, the next day, something unexpected happened. Lu Jingtian was still asleep in the morning. She came home late, took a shower, and cried under the blanket for a long time before she finally fell asleep. It was a call from Song Enya that woke her up. Where's Jingtian? Where are you now? Lu Jingtian was baffled by his question. She was still groggy from sleep, so she hoarsely replied, I'm at home. You're still sleeping? Song Enya was dumbfounded. She was still sleeping like nothing had happened even after such a big thing had happened. Lu Jingtian was even more confused now. I slept very late last night. Enya, what's wrong? From your tone, it sounds like something bad has happened. You'd better take a look at Weibo yourself. I only just found out. Hurry and take a look. The Missy's words gave her an ominous premonition. She quickly switched on the tablet and entered the Weibo app. The moment she opened the front page, she saw Lu Jingtian's sexy photos dominating the headlines. Lu Jingtian was so shocked that she almost choked. She covered her mouth as her eyes widened in shock. It turned out that Li Dongqiang had recorded a complete video yesterday. After editing it, he had uploaded a few screenshots to the internet. Other than Lu Jingtian, everyone else had been censored out. In the screenshots, Lu Jingtian's hair was disheveled, and her expression was enchanting. Her facial features were so clear that one could almost tell who the woman in the video was at once. Lu Jingtian's hand, which was holding the tablet, trembled uncontrollably. Chapter 10:17. At first, the netizens were a little skeptical, thinking that it might just be a coincidence that someone looked similar to Lu Jingtian. Soon, a mysterious ID released an even higher resolution image. The netizens could see it more clearly. There was a very obvious feature on her face. There was a mole at the corner of her mouth. This feature instantly confirmed her crime. Her mind went blank with a bang, and she was petrified as if she had been struck by lightning. Soon after, the media published a few photos of her in a bar, which showed her rubbing her ears intimately with a stranger. Perhaps it was because of the angle, but her expression looked especially slutty. With a cigarette in one hand, she laughed and fell into the man's arms. She looked like a prostitute. Some paparazzi even took photos of her hugging another man in a bar. It was such a hot scene that people could not help but sigh. Lu Jingtian looked pure on the surface, but she was actually such a person in private. How despicable. The photos were quickly spread all over Weibo, and the public opinion about her instantly dropped to the lowest point. Oh, my God. Seeing such explosive news so early in the morning, my worldview has been turned upside down. Is Lu Jingtian so open? She seems to be quite fun in private, and she seems to be quite fierce. I'm from the capital. I once bumped into her at Sovereign Bar. She was with a man, and they were very close. I wanted to take a photo, but it was too dark, so I couldn't get a clear picture. I was also afraid of getting into trouble, so I didn't take a photo. I thought that she was just a scheming woman. I didn't expect her to be such a despicable woman in private. How disgusting. The netizens left comments saying that Lu Jingtian was a vicious and scheming woman. They had never seen such a shameless female celebrity before. The mysterious ID seemed to have left her some leeway by not releasing the video. Lu Jingtian was petrified and did not react for a long time. This time, she had fallen into a state of eternal damnation. All the public opinion was overwhelmingly accusing her of it. Lu Jingtian could not help but recall her private diary on a personal blog. Harboring hatred for Yun Shusha, she wrote in the diary, "If there's a chance, I must let Yun Shusha, that be *tch, have a taste of humiliation. First, drug her, then throw her to 5 hooligans. Finally, I'll record the whole process and post it online. Let everyone take a good look at the so-called national first love in their eyes, how slutty and despicable she was in private. Hee hee. Was it an illusion? Why was her experience now exactly the same as the content of the private diary she had written on her blog? Could it be? Impossible. Her diary was a private diary that was locked. Other than her, no one else had seen it. Yoon Tianyu received a call from Li Hanlin. According to his instructions, the latter had already finished editing the video and bribed various public relations teams to spread rumors about Lu Jingtian's indecent deeds on the internet. Later, remember to release the surveillance video. This is the highlight of the show. Yes. However, President Yoon, don't you think you're being a little too ruthless? Chapter 10:18. The truth behind Lu Jingtian's pornographic photos? Look at those celebrities, who appear pure on the surface, in private. Lu Jingtian's pornographic photos scandal escalates. Lu Jingtian closes her Weibo account, guilty conscience. For the next few days, the scandal regarding Lu Jingtian's pornographic photos continued to fester. Recently, however, a small Weibo account suddenly released a short surveillance video. The video was very short, lasting only a few minutes. When the video was played, it showed Lu Jingtian beating up a woman in a hotel corridor. Although it was said to be a beating, the woman was indeed ruthless. The clip of Lu Jingtian beating up Yoon Na like a madwoman shocked many people. The reason why they could recognize Lu Jingtian at a glance was that her gown was very recognizable, so it was not difficult to distinguish her. This was what Lu Jingtian wore to Huanyu's gala, which was published in the newspapers. The Imperial Hotel's camera angle was very wide, and it was aimed at the corridor and the elevator door. There were 2 shots taken from different angles. When the first video was opened, it was still a little unclear. From this angle, one could only vaguely make out Lu Jingtian's back. As for the facial features of the person she was beating up, it was too blurry for one to recognize. When the second video was opened, it was aimed at the front of the 2 people. The angle was accurate, and the facial features were clear, so one could recognize Lu Jingtian at a glance. The shot was very clear, so Lu Jingtian's face was exposed. As soon as the video was released, it quickly attracted countless shares and views. In just a few minutes, it was read tens of thousands, and countless people fought to share it. Lu Jingtian's pornographic photos also reached a boiling point. Lu Jingtian's character was soon questioned from all sides. "Oh, God. I didn't expect Lu Jingtian to be so violent. That woman is so scary. She looks like a lotus on the surface, but I didn't expect her to be so dark inside. Lu Jingtian is too scary. How can a woman like her be a celebrity? Lu Jingtian should get out of showbiz." An anonymous netizen put up a poll to hash Lu Jingtian get out of showbiz hash. At first, Lu Jingtian's team tried to calm the matter down. However, no matter how brilliant a team was, in the face of such an irrefutable fact, there was no room for negotiation. Yun Tianyou's PR team worked overnight to prepare a press release to smear Lu Jingtian's reputation. By then, she was already in a mess. Under the immense pressure of public opinion, under Lu Buosheng's arrangement, Lu Jingtian left the country overnight to avoid the limelight. Lu Buosheng had no idea what was going on, but he had been in the entertainment industry for many years, so he could more or less guess what was going on. His daughter must have offended some big shot, and that was why she was being suppressed. Alas, no matter how he interrogated her, she refused to divulge anything. She feared him from the bottom of her heart. Even though this was clearly a child under the age of 8, she could not help but feel terrified when she thought about the cause and effect of this matter. In just one night, this child was able to ruin her reputation effortlessly. No matter how he did it. Then, he would also have the ability to flatten the Lu clan with a single finger. Hence, she dared not speak up no matter what. Chapter 1019. On the other hand, Yun Shusha was a little surprised by the uproar caused by Lu Jingtian's post on Weibo. She did not feel anything when she saw the articles bombarding Lu Jingtian on Weibo. It was an indescribable feeling. Lu Jingtian's fall did not give her much of a reaction. She only treated it as a piece of news and let it go after she read it. On this day, She called her, unable to hide her excitement. The casting for Lethal Beauty seemed to have taken a turn for the better. The investor, who had seen her photo, seemed to be interested in her and invited her out for a meal to discuss the film contract. She excitedly said, "Shusha, I've heard some insider news. Director Gu thinks highly of your acting skills and thinks that you can play the leading role, so he strongly recommended you to the investor. The investor saw your photo and thinks that your image is very suitable for the role, so he invited you out for a meal." The investor? There are 2 investors for Lethal Beauty. One is Chungguang Entertainment, and the other is Global Pictures, a very famous production company. "Shusha, do you want to give it a try? Who knows, you might succeed." It turned out that, although the producer had directly kicked Yun Shusha out of the list for that audition, Jiyu Xiaoyang was very satisfied with Yun Shusha's performance. Hence, he strongly recommended Yun Shusha to the head of Global Pictures, Sun Hua. Sun Hua watched Yun Shusha's audition video and was very satisfied with it, too. Her acting skills were explosive, and her eyes and expressions were very intense. Moreover, Jiyu Xiaoyang was full of praise for Yun Shusha, thinking that her acting skills were much better than Lin Ji's. Her aptitude was not bad and she was very photogenic. Hence, Sun Hua reported the situation to the higher-ups. At first, the higher-ups of Global Pictures gave an ambiguous reply, saying that they would discuss the matter before making a decision. Jiyu Xiaoyang really liked Yun Shusha and hoped to have a chance to use Yun Shusha in the future. Hence, he mentioned this matter to the higher-ups of Global Pictures. The Green Apple was going to be released soon. The box office was bound to be spectacular. Although Yoon Shusha was a newcomer, her potential was immeasurable. After the release of The Green Apple, with the support of Jiyu Xingze and Lin Fengtian, Yoon Shusha would definitely become famous overnight. At that time, Yoon Shusha would definitely be more talked about than Lin Ji. In that case, Lethal Beauty would definitely benefit from The Green Apple. When the person in charge heard this, he was indeed very tempted. Indeed, although Lin Ji was a popular A-list actress, compared to Yoon Shusha, Lin Ji's popularity was too high. After Lin Ji's debut, her reputation and popularity had been bountiful. However, the rumors about her were nothing. Yoon Shusha's popularity soared as soon as she debuted. Even before the crew of The Green Apple released any behind-the-scenes footage, Yoon Shusha's name would be on the hot search list. Hence, the higher-ups of Global Pictures decided to meet with Yoon Shusha to discuss the casting of the role. Sun Hua then contacted Qin Ju. Initially, when Qin Ju learned that Global Pictures had invited Yoon Shusha to a dinner party to discuss this matter, he hesitated for a moment before rejecting the invitation. Hence, Sun Hua thought of Mu Shi. When Mu Shi first received this news, she was overjoyed. Yoon Shusha, on the other hand, was a little hesitant. Dinner party. Yoon Shusha was inexplicably reminded of that dinner party where a young model had offered her body to the investors and producers in order to fight for resources. That unsightly scene was still fresh in her mind. Chapter 1020. Mu Shi, reject it for me. Ah! The assistant was stunned. Shusha, are you dumb? This is a rare opportunity. You must know that if you perform well and satisfy Worldwide's higher-ups, the production team of Lethal Beauty may decide to cast you. I have something on tonight, so I can't make it to the dinner party. Reject it for me, Yoon Shusha said. Even though the assistant felt that it was a pity, she could not force the matter, so she gave him a tactful reply. When Sun Hua heard this result, he was so angry that he flared up. This Yoon Shusha has just debuted, yet she's already putting on airs. Worldwide's higher-ups personally invited her, yet she rejected them without any hesitation. Is this appropriate? She's clearly acting like a big shot. When the news reached Worldwide's higher-ups, Li Dongliang, he gritted his teeth in anger when he heard that Yoon Shusha was acting like a big shot and was not coming. Sun Hua gripped his phone tightly as he heard Li Dongliang's sarcastic remark. That woman's character is still a little high and mighty. Why? Is she looking down on Worldwide or me? She's putting on airs just because I asked her to have a meal with me. A taxi stopped steadily at the entrance of Global. Sun Hua got out of the car, smiled apologetically, and explained to the phone in a low voice, Mr. Li, don't be angry. Why get angry over a small actress? Don't you think so? On the other end, Li Dongliang sneered. Haha. Why? I said that I wanted to treat her to a meal. Isn't that because I think highly of her? I've been in the industry for so many years, but I've never heard of such an actress. Me. This Yoon Shusha is a little arrogant. I think she's just looking down on me. Me. After a pause, Li Dongliang continued, Sun Hua, how did you do your job? I asked you to treat her to a meal, and in the end, you gave me the cold shoulder. If word of this gets out, do you want Worldwide to become a joke? I think you're just messing with me. Sun Hua could not help but feel flustered and vexed. Mr. Li, look at what you're saying. How would I dare to trick you? The man snorted coldly and his voice was filled with anger. This Yoon Shusha has really opened my eyes. In any case, I don't care how you do it. In any case, you have to get back at me. Even if she came, she had to come. He had to come even if he didn't want to. Otherwise, you can scram. When Sun Hua heard this, he felt even more guilty. He hurriedly said, Hey, Boss Li, don't be angry. It's all my fault. How about this? Let's set the dinner for tomorrow night. I'll definitely bring the person to you. At that time, you can do whatever you want. What do you think? The man suddenly laughed. Sun Hua, at least you know how to appreciate favors. It's tomorrow night. Don't let me wait too long. I don't want to waste any more time. You know that I don't have much patience. Before Sun Hua could speak again, he hung up the phone. Sun Hua was also angry that Yoon Shusha did not give him any face. She had just debuted and acted in a movie. It had not even been released yet, but she was already acting like a big shot. Li Dongliang had noticed her and invited her to a meal because he thought highly of her. One had to know that this dinner was not for just anyone. Many female celebrities were lining up but did not get a turn. When it came to Yun Shusha, she rejected it with one sentence. What was the meaning of this? Chapter 1021. When Li Dongliang saw the photo, he was stunned. However, Sun Hua showed him the audition tape. Li Dongliang naturally did not care about the audition. He was a capitalist. Being involved in the film industry was just a branch of his investment. He did not care about whose acting skills were good. He only cared about the return of the investment. That was all. Chungguang Entertainment and Worldwide Entertainment jointly invested in Lethal Beauty. Chungguang Entertainment intended to promote Lin Ji and internally selected her as the female lead. Li Dongliang did not care who the female lead was, so he did not have any objections. Before this, in order to please Li Dongliang, Chungguang Entertainment specifically instructed Lin Ji to fight for Li Dongliang's approval. After being in the entertainment industry for 3 years, Lin Ji was not as ignorant as she was when she first debuted. Naturally, she knew the benefits involved. She was also very obedient and sensible. She accompanied Li Dongliang for 2 nights and served him well. Li Dongliang was naturally satisfied with her. Hence, the matter of the female lead could be said to have been decided. However, after Jiyu Xiaoyang strongly recommended Yun Shusha to Sun Hua and Sun Hua showed Li Dongliang the photo, he started to miss Yun Shusha. After being in the industry for so long, he had played with many women. There was the charming and enchanting Yang Bingqing, the peerless Han Yuyan, and the fresh and beautiful Yang Mi. Most of them were like products of the assembly line. They had the same face and were not distinguishable, let alone temperament. Yun Shusha, on the other hand, had a unique temperament. She was pure and refined. What made it even more unbearable was that she seemed to have a temperament that made one want to conquer her impatiently. The more pure and beautiful a woman was, the more men wanted to conquer her and the more they wanted to ravage her. This was probably the deep-rooted bad habit of some men. A man's desire to conquer was undoubtedly manifested in 2 aspects. One was his career. The other was his woman. Hence, Li Dongliang personally said that he wanted to treat Yun Shusha to a meal. He wanted to make a move on her, who knew that Yun Shusha was not a person who knew how to play the game. She actually rejected him? However, Li Dongliang was indignant. Wasn't this clearly embarrassing him? He scolded Sun Hua badly. The next day, Sun Hua drove to Huanyu Tower and directly found the head of Huanyu's public relations department, Kong Xiaoqian. Speaking of Kong Xiaoqian, she was the head of Huanyu's public relations department. She was very young, but she had already become the head of the public relations department. How capable was she? That's not true either. Huanyu's internal relationships were intricate and complicated. Anyone who could occupy a place in Huanyu's upper echelons had a lot of connections behind them. Kong Xiaoqian was the daughter of the Kong Consortium. The relationship between the Kong Consortium and the Mu Corporation could be traced back to more than a decade ago. The cooperation between the 2 families was not shallow. Just the East Bay project that the Kong Consortium had just taken over from the Mu Corporation was worth several billion yuan. Kong Xiaoqian majored in public relations in university. After graduation, her father arranged for her to enter Huanyu's public relations department. A few months later, she was officially appointed as the deputy head of the public relations department. Now, he had been promoted to the level of a minister. After sitting down, Sun Hua went straight to the point and brought up this matter. Department head Kong, there's an artist called Yun Shusha in your company. Do you remember her? Chapter 1022. Kong Xiaoqian had gone abroad a few months ago to prepare for delivery. She had just returned not long ago and had not finished handing over the company's affairs. We've worked together for so many years, but this is the first time I've seen such an arrogant artist under Huanyu. She just debuted and acted in a movie, and she's already so arrogant. The movie hasn't even been released yet, and she's already acting like a big shot. How is this appropriate? Kong Xiaoqian fiddled with her beautiful nails as she smiled and said, Manager son, calm down too. Don't get angry over a small artist, haha. It's not worth it. Director Lee wants me to hand her over tomorrow. No matter what, I must bring Yoon Shusha to him today. Chief Kong, give me a definite answer too. Don't make things too difficult for me. I heard that this Yoon Shusha has just debuted, and the company has spent so many resources on her because she has some relationship with our young Master Mu. Who knows, maybe she's young Master Mu's pet. Kong Xiaoqian smiled sweetly as she spoke, as if she was a rich man's daughter. Pet was a jargon in this industry. It meant that she was a mistress kept by a big shot. Sun Hua smiled contemptuously and said, no wonder she's so ostentatious. It turns out that she's hooked up with young Master Mu. She just debuted and got the female lead role in director Lin's movie. She stole the limelight and was unrivaled for a while. It's all because of the unspoken rules. Since it's all because of the unspoken rules, why is she still so pretentious? Kong Xiaoqian was a little hesitant. She couldn't figure out the relationship between Yoon Shusha and Mu Yaja. Everyone said that she and young Master Mu had a close relationship, but to what extent? She didn't know. Sun Hua smiled faintly and asked word by word, Chief Kong, are you afraid that you won't dare to touch Yoon Shusha because she's young Master Mu's woman? Kong Xiaoqian said, Manager son, if she's really young Master Mu's woman, I won't dare to touch her at all. How is that possible? Young Master Mu would fancy a woman in the entertainment industry? Sun Hua snorted coldly. After all, even if she's Master Mu's pet, he's just playing with her. Young Master Mu was as precious as gold and jade. How could she be a match for him? One was in heaven while the other was on earth. Moreover, if she was really the woman that young Master Mu had his eyes on, how could young Master Mu allow his woman to mingle in the entertainment industry? Since you're in this circle, you should understand the rules of the game. Pausing for a moment, Sun Hua sneered coldly, since she likes to climb up high so much, then with this opportunity in front of her, why doesn't she hurry up and climb up the pole? If she served Boss Lee well, she would be rewarded handsomely. Naturally, you will also get your share. Kong Xiaoqian was still a little hesitant when Sun Hua said, I heard that your father recently got the East Bay project, but he's still short of fund. If you can get Yoon Shusha here, I'll talk to President Lee. Maybe if Yoon Shusha serves him well, he'll be happy. His voice stopped abruptly, and he didn't continue speaking. Kong Xiaoqian naturally understood the hidden meaning in his words. Her red lips curled up slightly as she exchanged a glance with Sun Hua and smiled mysteriously. Chapter 1023. In the past, whenever her eyelids started twitching, it was always a bad sign. Qin Ju had something to attend to. Before he left, he asked Yoon Shusha to consider the role of the second female lead in Lethal Beauty. If she accepted the role, he would help her settle it. Yoon Shusha was flipping through the script when Kong Xiaoqian suddenly walked in. Seeing that she was engrossed in reading the script, Kong Xiaoqian knocked on the door. The sudden movement startled her. Yoon Shusha looked up. Seeing that it was Kong Xiaoqian, she smiled. Department Head Kong? Hello. Kong Xiaoqian walked straight to her and sized her up. Suddenly, she smiled and asked, Yoon Shusha, are you free tonight? Yes, why? Kong Xiaoqian nodded and said, tonight, you and Li Quan will go meet a client. Li Quan was the secretary of the Public Relations Department. Yoon Shusha had met him once before. Meeting a client. Yoon Shusha was a little hesitant. She was in a hurry to go home. But on the other hand, she didn't want to offend Kong Xiaoqian, so she was a little hesitant. Kong Xiaoqian sized her up and warned, this client is very important to the company. Yoon Shusha, you have to remember that you're an artist under Huan Yu. So, you have to know what you're doing and what you're saying. Don't do anything that will cause losses to the company, understand? Kong Xiaoqian said meaningfully. Suddenly, she smiled strangely and said, that's good. This is a rare opportunity for you to train. Yoon Shusha hesitated for a moment, then smiled and nodded. Yes, I understand. She suddenly asked, Department Head, what kind of client is it? An investor. I heard that he thinks highly of you and wants you to act in a movie he's investing in. Go and have a good talk with him. Oh. She tidied up the script and locked it in the drawer. Then, she left with Li Quan, who was waiting at the door. Li Quan obviously didn't expect that Yun Shusha would be attending the social event with him this time. He was a little stunned for a moment. He had met her face to face a few times. She was beautiful, smart, and very polite. She had just stepped into society, and her whole person was as white and clean as a piece of white paper. Even a drop of ink stain on her would be so dazzling. In his heart, he suddenly felt a little regretful. He looked at Yun Shusha and guessed a thing or two. It was a common occurrence to give away women in the Vanity Fair. In the past, he often brought artists to social events. Many female artists were beautiful and smart. Not only did they have a glib tongue, but they also knew how to please men. In order to climb up the social ladder, they were willing to suffer any kind of loss. Li Dongliang was a sly old fox with a bad reputation. He was greedy for beauty and had toyed with many artists. He had toyed with both men and women. He even toyed with little fresh meats and was quite fierce. The so-called discussions about scripts and movie contracts, in the end, were all about the bed. Sleep with him for a few nights. This was how resources came about. When Li Quan saw Yun Shusha's pure and clear smile, he felt indignant, but he couldn't bear to see her like this. She wasn't scheming at all. She probably didn't expect that Kong Xiaoqian was pushing her into the fire pit. Yun Shusha was only in her 20s. Li Dongliang was ruthless and liked to take advantage of young women. He also liked to play with women. How could Yun Shusha withstand his ravaging? Kong Xiaoqian was really ruthless. However, Li Quan only thought about it in his heart. Kong Xiaoqian's status was not ordinary now. How could he dare to go against her? Chapter 1024. The interests involved in this matter were too deep, so he dared not interfere. When Yun Shusha left the company with Li Quan, the latter went to get his car and asked her to wait for him at the entrance. Thus, she gave Yu a call while she was at it. He did not pick up her 2 calls, and it was only on her 3rd call that he finally picked up. Yo-Yo's voice sounded tired and hoarse. "Hello." Yun Shusha could hear his tiredness and her heart ached for him. "Hence," she said, "Yo-Yo, Mommy will be back late today. Rest early and don't wait for Mommy." "How late will Mommy be back?" "Around 9:30 p.m. "Oh." Yo-Yo sounded a little unhappy as he said slowly, "Mommy will be back late." Yo-Yo can't sleep well. Yun Shusha was stunned for half a second before she gently said, "Yo-Yo, Mommy will definitely be back early, but Yo-Yo, don't wait too late." Yo-Yo replied, "Okay. Mommy must be back early." Muax. Muax. Yun Shusha hung up the call just as Li Quan drove the car over. Inside the car, the man held the steering wheel with a frown, deep in thought. Yun Shusha sat at the side, feeling nervous at the thought of having to socialize with those investors. She turned her head and sincerely said, "Secretary Li, this is my first time meeting the investors. If I say something wrong, please remind me." The man looked at her with pity. Yun Shusha saw his strange expression and asked worriedly, "What's wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" "I'm fine." Li Quan smiled absent-mindedly. Looking at her concerned expression, he suddenly felt a strong sense of guilt. She had just returned to the company and was about to go home when she saw Sun Hua and Kong Xiaoqian walking out of the elevator as she passed by. She subconsciously hid at the side when she saw that it was Kong Xiaoqian. However, he heard Kong Xiaoqian's laughter. "Manager Sun, don't you think I'm being too cruel? Li Dongliang is a man with a wicked sense of humor. He's not any better than He Lingxiang. I heard that he has ruined a few young actresses. You must ask Director Li to be more tolerant of Yun Shusha. Don't swallow her whole." She was so shocked that she almost let out a yelp. She quickly covered her mouth and held her breath as she heard Sun Hua say, "Doesn't Yun Shusha like to climb up the social ladder?" Although Li Dongliang has a strong family background, his net worth is not small. "I'm not mistreating him by letting such a big branch fly." Kong Xiaoqian smiled. Sun Hua continued, "This Yun Shusha is a stunner. It was no wonder that Mr. Li was so attentive to her. Who told her to be born with a foxy face? Men like this kind of woman." Kong Xiaoqian laughed and teased, "Ha ha. Who knows, Yoon Shusha might even be able to squeeze out the first wife and fly up the social ladder. The two figures gradually disappeared into the distance. Mu Shi, who was hiding behind a corner, was stunned. She widened her eyes in shock and gritted her teeth in anger. D***MNit. Don't tell me that Kong Xiaoqian forced Yoon Shusha to be a hostess. She had just gone out to ask around with her colleagues. That Li Dongliang was not a good person. He had a strong background and a bad character. She heard that he liked to play with women and that his methods were extremely cruel. If Yoon Shusha were to fall into his hands, she would be eaten alive. Chapter 1025. She was about to leave when she suddenly remembered something and paused in her steps. If Kong Xiaoqian were to find out that she was the one behind this, she might lose her job. However, on second thought, Shusha trusted her so much and treated her as a close friend. If she were to abandon her now, that would be too much of a good conscience. Relying on her memory, she hailed a taxi to Xiangti Walk and found her way to the villa's entrance. She pressed the doorbell and waited for a long time, but no one came to pick her up. Could it not be this villa? She did not remember wrongly, though. Was no one home? What should she do, then? If this dragged on, what would happen to Shusha? She could not help but shudder at the thought of Li Dongliang's wretched and sinister face. She was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. Just as she was breaking out in cold sweat, she suddenly thought of Mu Yaja. She took out her phone, but she forgot that she did not have his number. She did not even have his office or secretary number. She was in trouble. She suddenly had an idea. She dialed the secretary's office number at Dishing's headquarters and then called the secretary's desk. The moment the call was picked up, she heard the secretary's respectful and polite voice. "Hello, this is Dishing Financial Group's secretary's desk. May I know who you are?" She cut her off and shouted, "I'm looking for Mu Yaja." "Secretary, She then hung up the call. She probably thought that she was a crazy woman. Who would call the CEO's name and go crazy? She widened her eyes in disbelief. This is too much. She hung up just like that. What kind of service is this? She must complain to Mu Yaja about them. Thus, she suppressed her anger and called the same secretary again. She suppressed her anger and said word by word, "Listen, don't hang up. This is an urgent matter. Please listen to me first, okay?" The secretary's smile was a little stiff, but she still politely asked, "May I know who you are? Please transfer me to the CEO's office." The secretary was in a difficult position. "If we don't know who you are, it'll be considered a mistake on our part." Mu Shi bit her lower lip and said, "I'm Huanyu's head of PR, Kong Xiaoqian." As soon as this name was announced, the secretary was stunned. His attitude took a 360-degree turn as he respectfully said, "Minister Kong, please wait a moment. I will transfer the call for you immediately." After waiting for the busy tone for a moment, the call was connected again. Mu Yaja's lazy voice came through, "Hello, what's the matter?" "Master Mu, I'm Yoon Shusha's assistant, Mu Shi. We've met before." Mu Yaja raised his eyebrows, but his tone was still neither cold nor warm. "What's the matter?" She patiently recounted the entire incident. "It's like this, Imperial Hotel." Under the elegant light and the lingering smoke, the decadent sounds dyed the entire room with a bit of an ambiguous atmosphere. A woman with exquisite makeup was kneeling on the sofa. She was wearing a red dress that reached her hips and wrapped around her beautiful figure, revealing her curves. Without a doubt, this was a woman who was so coquettish that it was impossible for men not to be moved. She possessed a graceful and agile figure, her chest was full and snow-white, and her pair of fair and beautiful legs were half covered by her skirt. It was enough to make one's blood boil. Chapter 1026. Looking at the woman who was slowly approaching him, his eyes slowly narrowed. The woman lifted her wavy brown hair with one hand and slowly pulled down the straps of her shirt with the other, revealing her delicate and flawless shoulders. She lifted the wine glass, her red lips kissed the rim of the glass and took a small sip of the wine. Then, she turned around and knelt on the sofa. She held his chin and sealed his lips. With this kiss, the tip of her tongue drew the sweet wine into his mouth. The rich wine flowed between his lips and teeth. The woman unbuttoned his collar and reached her hand into his lapel inch by inch, gently teasing him. Under the retro wall lamp, Li Dongliang's eyes were very deep, very deep. There was no need to hide the depth in them. The corners of his mouth slowly curled up. His large palm caressed her slender waist and caressed it wantonly. The woman's delicate voice tugged at his heartstrings. Suddenly, he wrapped one hand around the back of her neck and bit her earlobe. The woman gasped in surprise and couldn't help but pout coquettishly. Her small hand pushed his muscular chest, but it seemed like an invisible temptation. It also seemed like she was resisting but welcoming it. Just when the atmosphere was at its most intimate, someone knocked on the door carefully. Li Quan walked in with Yun Shusha. Seeing such a hot scene in the private room, Yun Shusha was shocked and thought that she had walked into the wrong room. It wasn't until Li Quan gave a simple introduction that Yun Shusha realized that she had been ruthlessly sold by Kong Xiaoqian. What did she mean by meeting the investor, Li Dongliang? Wasn't he the executive from Universal Pictures who had asked to meet her 2 days ago? Could it be a Hongmen banquet? However, since she was already here, she might as well take things as they came. Li Dongliang narrowed his eyes and sized up Yun Shusha. Although he had seen her photo, she was even more stunning in person. She was a beauty, a complete beauty. Her skin, even without any makeup, was still fair and flawless. Her beautiful eyes clearly didn't have any eyeliner, but they were so long and flirtatious, charming, and moving. Her nose was tall and straight, and her lips were soft and moist. She was natural and clean, but she had a kind of soul-stirring beauty. This type of beauty could not be replicated. It was unique, just like a poppy, dangerous yet beautiful. It possessed a type of fatal allure. Li Dongliang looked at the charming woman in front of him. He gently lifted her chin and looked at the delicate makeup on her face. She was a new artiste signed by Heine Entertainment Company. With the dazzling halo of the Miss Asia champion, she was now very popular in the circle. Right now, the model wanted to get herself a role in a blockbuster film invested in by Universal Pictures. Therefore, under the recommendation of her agent, she had this opportunity. How could she let this rare opportunity go to waste? Naturally, she had to perform well. But for some reason, when compared with Yun Shusha, this woman in front of him instantly paled in comparison. Although she was beautiful, her beauty was too rigid and monotonous, like the product of an assembly line, too empty. When he looked at Yun Shusha again, every inch of her facial features was extremely lively, especially her eyes, which were shining and captivating. Therefore, when Li Dongliang looked at the woman with heavy makeup on her face and glanced at the 2 layers of fake eyelashes, he couldn't help but feel disgusted. Suddenly, he lost interest and coldly pushed her away. Chapter 10:27. The woman looked at him in surprise, but she understood that Li Dongliang was no longer interested in her, and she was no longer attractive to him. She lowered her head and bit her lip. She felt a little unreconciled and strange. It was going well just now, but she didn't understand what went wrong. At the same time, she was secretly angry at the woman who barged in. The atmosphere was just right, and it was about to go smoothly, but she ruined it. She couldn't help but feel a little frustrated. She helplessly tugged at his sleeve and blushed. She felt wronged and murmured, "Director Li, what's wrong?" Li Dongliang didn't even look at her. "Get out." Then my role. Get out." The woman was unwilling, but she got up helplessly and left the room. Yun Shusha sat a little cautiously in her seat, occasionally glancing at Li Dongliang, who was sitting in the main seat. From the moment she entered the room, this man had been looking at her from top to bottom with a very strange gaze. That gaze made her feel very uncomfortable. It was as if he couldn't wait to peel off her skin and eat her bones clean. She looked at Li Quan for help, but she saw that he was still calm, but his smile was slightly unnatural. At the banquet, the topic originally revolved around the interests and cooperation of the 2 companies. Everyone sitting there was a knife hidden in their smiles. You could often distinguish 3 meanings from one sentence. They had dug a trap and were waiting for you to jump into it. This was one of the few occasions that Yun Shusha attended such events. How many of the faces on the table were real? Everyone seemed to have their own ulterior motives. After half a glass of wine, the smiles on the table gradually became a little impure. They began to talk about things that Yun Shusha had never heard of, such as how much a certain female star was paid for a night, or a certain socialite being kept as a mistress. Li Dongliang was even more slovenly when he opened his mouth. He said boldly, "Don't look at those female stars on TV. Who knows which sugar daddy they are having sex with in the middle of the night? Haha. That's all on the surface. But in reality, it's all dirty. Do you know that song queen from Hong Kong? Do you know why Yang Shoucheng wants to support her?" Everyone was all ears. Li Dongliang snorted coldly. First, this woman and Yang Shoucheng's 8 characters are compatible. Secondly, Yang Shoucheng brought the 3 women to a dinner party and pointed to a pot of spring rolls on the table. He said that if anyone could break a spring roll on the plate with their legs, he would promote that person to a higher position. Hee. Later on, when she became famous, we all secretly called her spring rolls. Everyone was speechless. What a bad taste. Yun Shusha, on the other hand, was confused. She did not understand what Li Dongliang meant by clipping it off with your lower body. However, when he looked around again, he saw that everyone was secretly laughing in tacit understanding. He felt extremely uncomfortable in his heart. This is really a bad taste, but it sounds quite interesting. Another producer laughed. In terms of bad taste, who can compare to He Ling? What do you mean? Chapter 1028. Haha. Isn't that so? I've played with Lin Haiyu before. She's boring. Li Dongliang frowned and pretended to be serious. But that young master is so infatuated with that Lin Haiyu. He wants her no matter what. So, his mother, the chairman of the board of directors, said that if she wants to marry into a rich family, she has to give birth to a son first. But Lin Haiyu's stomach is disappointing. She hasn't given birth yet. Haha. What do you know? The producer laughed. She can't give birth at all. She was played by those sugar daddies in the past. I heard that there was once a ridiculous incident. Tell me about it. Li Dongliang said with interest. One night, Lin Haiyu was rushed to the hospital. Apparently, the 3 of them were having a threesome with a director and a sugar daddy. I don't know how the 3 of them came up with the idea of stuffing a billiard ball into her lower body, so she couldn't take it out. Lin Haiyu said. That night, Lin Haiyu was sent to the hospital in a hurry. It was He Lingxiang's doing. Everyone thought that it was ridiculous and amusing at the same time, and they all laughed. Yun Shusha was the only one who sat stiffly in her seat. Her face was a little pale. What the hell is going on? Li Dongliang laughed. He's still being merciful. He Lingxiang has played with many young models before. Yun Shusha found these topics unpleasant. Gradually, she felt that she couldn't sit still, but she couldn't leave without permission. She didn't know how long it would take for this ridiculous banquet to end. She carefully tugged at Li Quan's sleeve, but the latter ignored her. Li Dongliang obviously noticed her little movement. He squinted his eyes and looked at her flustered face. He suddenly remembered Kong Xiaoqian's phone call before the banquet. Kong Xiaoqian said that the woman was a gift that she had specially sent to him as a filial piety. She asked him to have fun and play with her as he pleased. However, she was Qin Ju's artist after all. She was afraid that it would be difficult to explain. She also mentioned the shortage of funds for the East Bay project. Naturally, Li Dongliang agreed. Kong Xiaoqian was overjoyed. She told him to have fun and hung up the phone happily. Li Dongliang was a capitalist. Naturally, he would not invest in a loss-making project for a woman. The East Bay project was won by the Mu Consortium and handed over to the Kong Consortium. Naturally, it was a golden resource that was guaranteed to be profitable. Li Dongliang glanced at Yun Shusha meaningfully. This woman was truly a stunner. Her appearance was delicate and beautiful, and her temperament was pure. What was even rarer was, he furrowed his brows. This woman in front of him actually bore some resemblance to Qing Cheng. Speaking of this Li Dongliang, he was also one of Qingqing's many admirers back then. At that time, Qingqing's status in Beijing was similar to the status of Meng Lina in Asia. He had many admirers. Li Dongliang was naturally one of them. But speaking of Qing Cheng, he had both love and hate. Love was natural. Since ancient times, A gentle and graceful woman was a good match for a gentleman. Although Li Dongliang was not a gentleman, he hated Qing Cheng for being too aloof and arrogant. She was as beautiful as a blooming rose, but her entire body was covered in sharp thorns. With just a touch, one would be covered in wounds and could only be admired from afar. Chapter 1029. However, this rose did not lack followers like him. She was like a moon surrounded by stars. However, Mo Qingqing's personality was too prideful. Because of this, she didn't even bother to look at him. This caused Li Dongliang to feel bitter. At that time, he was just the boss of a small company. He was not rich and did not have the ability to compete with those big bosses of the upper class. However, when he was successful in his business, Qing Cheng suddenly disappeared from capital city. There was no news about her. Although the beauty of this girl before him couldn't be compared to Qing Cheng back then, her facial features and her charm were 70 to 80% similar to Qing Cheng. If she dressed up, they would be exactly the same. From the first time he saw her, if it wasn't for their age difference, he would have thought that this woman in front of him was Qing Cheng. It was common for business to send women as gifts. In this day and age, how many companies had a clean public relations department? Since it was Kong Xiaoqian who sent this woman to him, he did not need to pretend to be polite. He was very satisfied with this woman. Looking at her young face and thinking about her seductive posture in bed, he could not help but feel a little aroused. If it wasn't for his face, he really wanted to hastily end this boring banquet and bring this charming little woman along to have some fun. However, this woman did not seem to give him any face. She did not even touch the wine in front of her. No matter how he tried to persuade her, she refused again and again, claiming that she could not drink. Hey, this must be a joke. She could not drink. The entertainment industry was half a Vanity Fair. She said that she could not drink. It seemed that this woman wanted to avoid it. However, he was not in a hurry. He was the CEO of the Li Group. What woman could he not handle? These women were only interested in money and power. Give them some benefits, and they would get it. It was nothing more than checks, villas, luxury cars, jewelry. Women loved nothing more than these. He was not the same as before. With his wealth, there was nothing that she could not satisfy. Thinking of this, he smiled and asked, "Miss Yun, can you sing?" "No." Yun Shusha forced a smile. She thought to herself, "Do I have to report to you if I can sing? It's none of your business. Also, when will this drinking party end?" Li Dongliang saw that she was absent-minded and filled his glass to the brim. He raised his goblet at her and smiled. "Miss Yun, may I have the honor of toasting you?" Yun Shusha was a little anxious. She looked at the time and the sky outside the window. Seeing that this big boss wanted to propose a toast to him, he couldn't help but feel a little awkward. He pursed his lips and said apologetically, "Director Li, I'm sorry. I can't drink today. Isn't that a little inappropriate?" Li Dongliang was a little dissatisfied in his heart. This little woman didn't even give him face. He squinted his eyes and rebuked, "You should at least have a drink. Don't ruin everyone's mood. How can there be no reason not to drink at the table?" Yun Shusha was extremely embarrassed. This Li Dongliang had put it this way. If she didn't drink it, she wouldn't be giving him face. Chapter 1030. She really couldn't drink. If she could hold her liquor well, not to mention Li Dongliang, everyone at the table would have forced her to drink until she passed out. At the thought of her not giving him face, Li Dongliang might be dissatisfied with her attitude. Or perhaps because of this, the film contract might fall through. Yun Shusha was so shocked that she was trembling all over. But when she thought of Mu Yaja finding out that she looked like the reincarnation of Satan after drinking, she suddenly felt her hair stand on end. On second thought, she still felt that she could offend Li Dongliang but not Mu Yaja. Thinking of this, she shook her head and said tactfully, half jokingly and half seriously, "Sorry, I really can't drink. If I can hold my liquor well, I'll give you a toast." Li Dongliang smiled and narrowed his eyes as he asked, "Miss Yun, you can't hold your liquor well?" Yun Shusha said embarrassedly, "Yes, I'll be drunk after one glass." Li Dongliang also smiled playfully and said cheerfully, "Miss Yun really knows how to joke. How can you hold your liquor so badly?" If you can't hold your liquor well, you need to train more. Train my ass. If you could train your liquor well, anyone could drink. Yoon Shusha smiled as she cursed in her heart. She poured some tea and used it as a substitute for alcohol to give Lee Dongliang a toast as an apology for her negligence. Lee Dongliang smiled as he drank the white wine in his cup in one gulp. His lips curled into a meaningful smile. The show had just begun. At the table, Lee Dongliang didn't mention a word about the film contract for Lethal Beauty. This wasn't something he could bring up with his status. When it came to roles, actors had to fight for it themselves. Yoon Shusha didn't have the slightest intention of begging him. Lee Dongliang couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Hence, he made a call and called Lin Ji over. Once Lin Ji entered the private room, she first looked around and respectfully greeted the few bosses and producers present. Once she saw Yoon Shusha, she was full of doubts and silently suspected that this Yoon Shusha was not here to snatch the role from her, right? He couldn't help but raise his guard. Hence, she giggled and walked toward Lee Dongliang. She hooked her arms around his neck and sat in his embrace. CEO Lee, did you call me here because you missed me? Why haven't I seen you looking for me for so many days? Lee Dongliang smiled, his big palm caressed her buttocks, fiercely kneaded, and kissed her mouth. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, this kiss was really too much. However, the few people present seemed to be used to such ****** scenes and did not show any expression of discomfort. Only Yoon Shusha felt uncomfortable sitting on pins and needles. He felt especially embarrassed. Lee Dongliang, on the other hand, seemed to have the intention of letting Yoon Shusha see how other women worked hard to please her. On the other hand, Yoon Shusha was not only indifferent, but she also seemed to be disgusted by such an erotic scene. She kept her head down, and no one knew what she was thinking. What on earth was this woman thinking? In the past, at such a dinner party, a woman like her would think of ways to please the sugar daddy so that she could get the female lead role. But look at her. She didn't even drink. Even after such a long time had passed, she didn't say anything. She was completely uninvolved. Even if she was pretending to be aloof, she should have had enough. He didn't believe that there was a woman in this world who was indifferent to glory and wealth.